On this week's episode of Circles Off, we're joined by the famous Ken Barkley of You Better You Bet, Locky Lockerson. We're touching on all sorts of topics, including how to bet on futures, how Ken got started in the space, and we're going to talk about bad beats a little bit. Let's get right into it. For all of you watching out there, we wish you minimal sweats, winning bets, and the absolute very best of luck. Welcome to Circles Off, episode number 77. Rob Pizzola, joined by Johnny from betstamp. 77, probably one of the easiest, like a million players off the top of my head, I can think of jersey number 77 in every sport.
Okay, Raymond Bourque.
Yeah.
Boston Bruins, Colorado Avalanche Cup winner.
Yeah.
Luka Doncic.
Yep.
Doncic. Okay, NFL.
Tyron Smith is left tackle of the Cowboys, but Andrew Whitworth was 77. Even in hockey, there's like Paul Coffey was 77. Pierre Turgeon was 77. Jeff Carter, 77.
Jeff Carter. It was an older number.
Yes. Baseball,
not
I can't
as common
think
anymore.
of a 77. It's tough with baseball though, because you don't realize that, you don't see the jersey numbers a whole lot or remember them.
Fair enough.
Today's episode, as always, brought to you by Pinnacle Sportsbook. Pinnacle is the world's sharpest sportsbook and is now available to residents of Ontario. Find out what professional bettors have known for decades. Pinnacle is where the best bettors play. You must be 19 plus in Ontario. Please play responsibly, not available in the U.S. And once again, we do preach line shopping very often on Circles Off because it is a low-hold sportsbook. Absolutely must have Pinnacle in your collection of sportsbooks. I'm very excited for today's episode. Usually I'm on the other side of this interview on a weekly basis, but we're turning things around. We welcome in Ken Barkley. You can find him on Twitter at Locky Lockerson. That's the Twitter handle. Might not be the name on Twitter as it's changing frequently. We'll get into that as well. He is the co-host of You Better You Bet, Monday to Friday, 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern Time on the Odyssey app, and you can find it wherever you get your podcasts as well. Ken Barkley, welcome to Circles Off.
Thanks. Do you guys do the jersey thing at the start of every episode? I should know that because
we started about at episode 61 maybe, and then
okay.
No.
In its infancy.
Yeah.
Some of the good numbers.
It's in its infancy.
I was this is a true story. I was in Vegas for NCAA tournament, maybe like right the UMBC Virginia one. I was 18.
Yeah.
I think.
Yep.
There was another one and then COVID. So that one I was in Vegas. I was at a roulette table with a friend of mine, like one of my best friends who I used to work with at ESPN, and Kenny Mayne was with us at the table. And Kenny Mayne, every time he would bet on a number at roulette, would say the name of a guy who wore the jersey of the, and as like, obviously, I don't think that's like out of bounds for me to tell that story. It's just really funny that like a lot of people think that way. It's like, that's this guy, right? So he's just spraying the board, like putting money down, like, oh, this guy. It was just really funny.
I actually can't pinpoint when this first started for us. It wasn't something that was planned. Let's put it that way. It wasn't something where I went into an episode one day and said, hey, I'm just going to start firing off all the jersey numbers of players. It just randomly started happening. And then when the first time it happened, I'm like, hey, that's kind of cool. Let's just use it in every episode. I don't even know if it is cool or not, but it's a mental challenge or exercise for me, at least.
Cool is probably the wrong word.
Yes.
Cool would be the word that I would use. It's unique. Let's say unique. That's good.
Fair enough.
So
and you're unique, Rob. You're a unique guy.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
We take a small break from my morning, which was searching for a couple darts that we could throw in the Canada game for the World Cup. So before we get into it, Ken, gotta ask, how's the World Cup betting going? We're going to get into the background intro, but off the top, how's your World Cup betting going so far?
Well, I would never fancy myself and the match has just ended. Japan has defeated Germany.
It is official.
We have gone final. What a result, right? Pretty crazy. And so I would never fancy myself like a winning soccer bettor. I don't watch soccer almost at all except for international competitions, but I love the World Cup. The Euro is fine too, and during the summer when there's nothing on, you watch whatever like the made up competitions that the United States are playing in against Martinique or whatever. You watch those matches.
CONCACAF. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, big CONCACAF guy over here, let me tell you. But the World Cup, I love the World Cup. It's just awesome. And I always think whenever it's in any sport, and this could be an obscure sport too, whenever it's the best of that sport playing each other, I'm going to be in, right? If it's darts. It's like, okay, well, are these the two best darts players? Well, then I want to watch this if it's, the best of anything. And obviously that's what the World Cup is. So love to watch it from a betting standpoint. Bet some tournament long stuff. I bet a lot of awards and season long stuff in other sports. I wouldn't say I can apply all of those methodologies to the World Cup. A lot of times history or an understanding of history can help you in those, North American professional sports leagues, especially, or college football or college basketball. But in the World Cup, it's only every 4 years. So is there really like a historical trend on who wins the Golden Ball, for example, which is a pretty crazy award because it seems to only ever go to somebody who comes in second. It's like really a weird award to try to handicap. But is that like a thing, or is it just that this only happens every 4 years and it's more random? So have some bets in those markets. I don't know if I'll have anything. Canada's playing next. We were talking about that. I don't know if I'll have anything there, but trying to, honestly, right after we're done here, probably try to kind of extrapolate. All right, like Germany just lost. Argentina has lost already. What does that mean? Like, should it mean something? Are there some markets that should be affected by this aside from the obvious ones, like awards or some of the more ancillary, like leading scorer type stuff? And that's probably what I'll be working on right after this.
Appreciate that. Did you end up grabbing any of Giroud to lead the tournament in goals?
That was a news-related play.
A news-related play. A lot of the sharps were on that one.
Right? That was a big. So that's like my favorite thing about betting, probably in some of these markets. Maybe not the Benzema one specifically, but markets all kind of stay pretty stable, or in some cases stay stable for a little bit, and then you have some kind of weird like lightning strike event happen. It's like a piece of news or information, or it's a game result, like this one, for example, or like Argentina losing to Saudi Arabia, which is still insane. I'm laughing as I say that. And okay, this thing has happened. Like, now what? Like, are you trying to get ahead of everybody rushing to bet something? Like, you want to be first? Or do you think that people are likely to misinterpret what that information means? In the case of France, maybe you can make the argument that they became more valuable as a result of losing Benzema, not in terms of that their team quality went up. It didn't. It went down, but just that their prices went up to do everything. And maybe they became a valuable bet, just trying to interpret what all that stuff means, right? So we've already had a few. We had Benzema out for France. We had Argentina losing, and now we've had Germany losing. I think all three of these, you could kind of try to figure out, how do I interpret that?
I mentioned it off the top. People can follow Ken on Twitter at Locky Lockerson, but I talked about the fact that his name is often changed, and this happens a lot. It was Locky Lockerson for a while. You were away for a few days, so it was Rody Tripperson. I see it's now Backy Homerson because you're obviously back home.
Changed it just for you guys.
Changed it now.
Breaking news.
But I'm going to steal Johnny's thunder here. It feels like you've missed a prime opportunity to have it be Worldy Cupperson over the course of these next few weeks. And
I have to keep it up, though. I couldn't change it. If I did that, I'd have to be up until the final, right? Which is in 2 Sundays, something like that. I'm a rapid fire guy. Like, we got to be changing it. Yeah, whatever happens tonight in sports, like, it'll probably reflect that.
I've seen a couple rainy dayerson, just for the one day.
Those are the slow times. Yeah, those are the slow weeks. Folly Weatherson was up for. Well, I couldn't change my name. I thought it was because Elon bought Twitter and all the engineers quit, and I couldn't figure out why I couldn't change. I kept getting an error message over and over and over again. So I was Folly Weatherson for a solid 2.5 months, basically, and it was not by choice. And I was really actively working behind the scenes to try to fix that.
That would have really rattled me, because what if you got stuck with that forever? Like, you'd just be like,
well, wow. I said if we get to December 21st, it's game over. Like, I lose all credibility and respect, whatever credibility and respect I had in the gambling business. I definitely won't have anymore.
If it got to winter, that's it. It's over.
Okay,
that's
so
tough. Yeah, that was the end.
Can I call you Locky?
Sure.
Just a joke.
Whatever.
Ken, so we'll get into it now. Was hoping you can give us a little bit about, your personal background, getting involved in the betting space. You talked a little bit about what you're betting, but how did you come into the space? I know you're a producer for a number of years, and now obviously you got your own show, which does really well, and I'm a big fan of as well. So let's hear it.
Yeah, well, thank you. First of all, so yeah, I worked in TV for a long time. Graduated college, entry-level position at ESPN, like, just was one of 10,000 resumes in a stack, and through sheer randomness, basically, and good luck, got an interview, drove up the next day, moved a month later, and started a career there. Like, worked my way up there, basically worked there for 11 years, got to what I would call like basically the middle of a production chain, right? So you have kind of like your showrunners and your vice presidents and stuff at the top of the chain, all the way down to like the actual like lead producer of the show. Then you have kind of like the staff of the show, and then like the lower level staff of the show, basically. And I was kind of like in the middle there. Like I would produce some shows, but really I was producing a lot of the video content that would air on the shows, basically. So the last show that I worked on before I left was Sports Center with Scott Van Pelt, which was an awesome show to work on, and still love those guys. And basically, like, from its conception, worked on developing a lot of the franchise elements that you still see on the show, which is cool. A lot of those were Scott and Steve's ideas, and we were just kind of bringing them to life, basically. And one of them was Bad Beats, which I think people that listen to this podcast probably know pretty well. And I was approached by the producer of the show, who was a really good friend, still a really good friend of mine, and basically was like, "This is like, here's the site. Scott wants to do this." I think he even said, "I would say this is the thing that Scott is the most excited about and will be the most on in terms of like making sure we get it right," basically, because obviously Scott's a big gambler and loves talking about betting, and especially college football. And I kind of knew some of the games that he had referenced previously. Like there's a famous Belk Bowl that was like a really, really, really bad beat. There's the game that's in the montage, which I actually lost money on too, which was Ohio State Northwestern, when Northwestern was undefeated. That was the Saturday night ABC game. And Musburger and Herbstreit are calling it. There's a lateral sequence at the end of the game where Northwestern doesn't cover, which was hideous at the time for me. And then there's, other things have been added. And I like cut that montage, music, pulled all the video, whatever. And the sense of validation when like I sent it out that it was good to watch, and both of them were just like, "It's perfect, like it's good to go," basically. And like that was really cool. I think that still kind of has survived to this day. One funny story about that real quick is just there's a horse race in there that people who watch the show a lot will know from that montage. You can even see the date on the screen. It's from Gulfstream Park in Florida. And there's a horse called Fallen Leaf is the name of the horse. And the clip is that basically he bucks the rider right before he's about to finish the race. And there's a really funny call that goes along with it. Okay, I was at Mohegan Sun that day in like the Connecticut, Rhode Island border, basically. And I bet that race. And I had the horse that won when Fallen Leaf lost. So I actually won money on like when you see the bet, like that wasn't actually a bet. It was a bad beat for anybody who bet Fallen Leaf. The 4, who I don't even think you see across the finish line that race, was named Philly Mignon. That was the name of the horse, which is a great name for a horse. And I won money on Philly Mignon. I like called Stanford Steve from the race book. Just go, "I don't think you were watching this. Like, did you see what happened at Gulfstream Park?" And he's like, "No." It's like, "We have to pull this. Like, this has to be in immediately." So that's always the funniest one for me when I see it, because there's like a personal story where like I saw this and I just go, "I cannot believe this just happened." We ended up doing a feature on the horse and everything. So yeah, just like a little bit of my background, just kind of like an example of the type of stuff that I would work on when I was at the company. Worked on a lot of other different shows, but that would be the one that was probably the most memorable and the one that like this audience would probably relate to the most.
So in regards to the Bad Beat segment, just some background on me. Well, obviously myself and Johnny are Canadian. We don't get ESPN up in Canada. I've always known of Scott Van Pelt through Twitter and saw a lot of those segments just through digital, but never watched ESPN on a nightly basis. To my recollection, that was the first of like the Bad Beats type of content that's out there. And then it just exploded and you saw it everywhere. Like literally everyone who's producing sports betting content had to do some sort of segment on Bad Beats. Curious, as someone who was a part of the origination of that type of content, do you see it as some sort of validation? Does it upset you when you see people like copycatting content that already works? Just curious on your thoughts on that, or if you're just completely indifferent and you never notice it.
I don't think I'm indifferent. Anytime you work on something for a couple of years and you put a lot of effort into it, I think you're always going to have some emotional attachment to it. I still watch the segment when it's on. Obviously, I have no attachment to the segment anymore. Like another probably really good like team of people is working on it now, and they've made some changes. They do some really cool stuff on. They have this graphics package now that's like unbelievable. Makes it way easier to follow what's happening when you're sweating the bets and everything that are going on the show. I think any bettor can relate to this too. Like it's really fun to be first. You're combing through all these markets. Maybe you find something that's off market and nobody else has noticed it yet. That's why it's still there. When you make that bet, like it feels pretty good, right? It feels pretty awesome that you found something that nobody else found. And, I would compare that to, being in the production room or our meeting room, 25, 30 people in the room for the first the month leading up to the start of the show, and then the first few months of the show, designing all this stuff. And then, I really took like a sense of pride in, I basically every Sunday and every Monday morning, I would put together the entire list of what had happened during the weekend. And like, here's all this stuff that I found here. The more obscure, the better. Here's this FCS second half, or here's this, the poor quality feed. I think everyone, like, those are the things that people like the most, right? NBA, college basketball, whatever. And I took a lot of pride in like building that whole list. I bring it to the meeting. And then the last thing at the Monday show meeting, after we had talked about everything else, was basically like me pitching Scott things that, and some of them, obviously he watches a lot of stuff too. He has things that he wants to be in, which is awesome. And I would kind of be like, hey, I'm not sure if you saw this, not sure if you saw this, like pitching that stuff. And he would like pick the order, and I would, and me and a couple production assistants would cut it. And like, that's, that being first with that type of content and seeing how much it's exploded, I don't know if we're like the inspiration for that necessarily. We probably were just first. And then I think honestly, most media companies were like, oh, we can do that. Like we can actually show gambling stuff like that. Like it kind of broke through this invisible barrier probably that existed that really didn't exist, right? You actually could have done it the entire time, just nobody really did. So it's cool. It's cool to see how that content is taken off. Obviously now you have every single sports book and sports betting Twitter account. Anytime there's anything remotely close to a bad beat, tweeting it out, so it's saturated, like it's everywhere now. But yeah, I still have an affinity for the original, seeing the montage, knowing the random game that they will bring up in part. Here's Furman and southeastern Louisiana or whatever. I think they can still do that kind of better than anybody can do it, and so it's really cool to still see it be successful. It's
funny how everyone knows this, but for every bad beat, that just means there's also like a lucky win, right?
Sure.
They're all
the same, good wins.
Good wins. Exactly. So you have a lot of good wins. For every bad beat, there's a good win, Every action has a reaction, so to speak. But you never see anyone advertising like what a lucky win for these bettors who had like this team that just got the 6 laterals and then got the touchdown. It's always like, imagine you had this team. And it's like, do people, and you, I guess being one of the 4 like founders kind of this style of content, was there a reason for that? Obviously, like what's the psychology? Why do people like to watch a bad beat instead of a good win? Because everyone does bad beats. No one does good wins.
Sure. I mean, I think as bettors, and Rob will obviously identify with too, we can be pretty miserable people, and we're pretty pessimistic. And when we watch a game, this is definitely true. The more you bet, like the more miserable you are watching a game almost, because all of the bad things that are possible when you bet on something. Another NCAA tournament story, but I was in Vegas. I was in our room at the Venetian with like 4 of us, 2 girls and 2 guys. And the girls had bet on when Jimmer Fredette played for BYU. They played their first round game. It was like, I think they were 3-14. I won't remember the team, but they were, I want to say like 9.5, something like that, against the 14 seed. And they were up like 12 with 50 seconds left or something. And the 2 girls were, and this is not like a sexist thing. This is just like people who let's just say people who hadn't bet before, because this would be true with guys too. Yeah. They were kind of celebrating like this was a wrap. Like we did it, like they're going to win. Like the clock's just going to run out. Like nothing can possibly happen that will make this bet lose. And my friend and I are sitting there and we know better. And we're just like, like you're looking good, but they're about to pull Jimmer and everybody else. And cups are going to come in and it could get really crazy. And I'm pretty sure the 14 seed backdoored that game. I'm pretty sure they hit some kind of shot in the last 20 seconds. So just the more you watch and the more you bet, just you are always you're never thinking about the positive outcomes, right? You're only ever thinking about the negative. Well, that's what bad beats is. We're all only thinking about the negative outcomes. So I'm sure you guys can identify with this.
I can definitely identify. So this past NFL Sunday that just happened, I think we had 5 games in play in the early slate, and we were 5-0 ATS at the end of the first quarter in those games, maybe 5-1, something like that.
But did you have all dogs? Did you count that as 5-0?
Let's just say that
all positions were above win.
Exactly. From a probabilistic perspective, we were likely to win 5 of the 6 positions. And the group messages in my chat were like, things are going way too well right now. Get ready, like buckle up for these fourth quarters. It was never somebody saying like, hey guys, things are looking really good. Like this might be a big week for us. It was a focus on everything that could possibly go wrong. And I think part of that is just betting sports for a long time and having things go wrong that just like they stick with. It's so hard to shake them. It really is. Like, you know, you get a lucky overtime win in you bet an over in college hoops and it goes to OT and you get that win. It's like, I feel dirty. You know, I'm like, this was like, it's so lucky. I didn't really cap this game properly or whatever. But when you get that under that goes to overtime and loses, you're just like miserable.
Blood red, man.
You'll never. There's been a few games this week. There was a Syracuse game earlier this week where, you know, I had the under in that overtime and it goes over, and it sticks. I don't know why. You can't shake it, but it just feels like the world was out to get you in that moment, right?
Well, there's something else too. It's what we're doing, and you know, I think people listen to your show all the time. Like, Rob's a professional. Even if in that moment maybe he wasn't acting like a professional because it's just miserable to sweat these games, like, Rob's a professional. What the bad beats dynamic, what it also speaks to, and we can't ignore this, I'm sure people are listening thinking of this right now, is the idea that every time you win, it's because you're a genius. It's because you got it right. It's because everything went exactly as you intended. And that's the way things should work on some level. Like, that's how you feel. You're like, it's going the way it should go. And when there is a bad beat, it's only ever because you got insanely unlucky. It wasn't because you did something wrong or like your process was incorrect or you didn't get the best of the number or whatever. It's like the good win is all credit to you, and the bad beat is all someone else's fault. Basically, like, it can't possibly be on me. So I think to your point, Rob, like, I feel the way you do a lot of times when you watch, but even sometimes in the moment, I'll be like, I had this thing nailed, and then, you know, whatever X thing happens that just like makes it go crazy wrong. The college football story from this year, that would be an example. What was it? TCU 7.5 against West Virginia 3 weeks ago. Yep. And TCU obviously scores a touchdown with like no time left. West Virginia was covering most of the game. You know, I think a lot of people are like, we had it and then it was ripped away from us, as opposed to it's actually like kind of a random outcome of a game and you can't really determine the order the points are going to be scored. And it just happened to go that way. Nobody wants to hear that. Everybody wants to hear like, I had it right, and then some terrible miscarriage of justice happened, and then it was taken away from me. And that's obviously Bad Beat speaks to that too.
I'm numb to anything now that's within realm of happening in the game happening and not counting that as a bad beat. So, for example, like getting backdoored in a college football game, it's going to happen. End of the game, there's going to be like a chance where like, all right, you're going to have this, and then it's like they're going to run here. What I can't fathom, the actual bad beats are like when it goes one step further. So it's like, all right, I'm covering right now, and I have plus, or you'll be like, the only way I lose is if they score a touchdown here in garbage time on this last drive, go for 2 and make it. And they don't need to go for 2. And you're like, they're not going to go for 2. So I should be good. They get to touchdown, and then you see them lining up for 2. You're like, why? Why are they going for 2?
Like,
now I'm sweating a 50-50 here, and then they make
that was
2.
like Stefanski at the end of the Bills game. That's like down 15.
So yes, that one was interesting, but
that wasn't really for the spread or anything.
Well, he could have chose either way because there's 11 seconds.
Well, he could have gone for 2 to cover 7.5.
He could have.
That was the number most of the week.
So a lot of people were upset about that in terms of like, why is Stefanski not going for 2 in this situation? Normally you want to
I was just surprised. I wasn't angry. I was just surprised.
Well, the whole logic behind that going for 2 there is you do it so that you know where your team stands, right?
Right.
So you know that if you're down, if you don't get it, you have the remaining time to be able to get it. Because there was only 11 seconds left in the game, it doesn't matter if you know where your team stands.
That's true.
You're going to have to convert a 2-point conversion at one time or another. He just arbitrarily chose, though, to say, you know what, let's just kick it here and
right.
You know,
but that's the point. It was arbitrary. So if it's arbitrary, I think people are allowed to get mad, right? If it's arbitrary, they're allowed to
listen
because there's no rhyme or reason. It was like heads, I'm going to go for it. Tails, I'm going to kick the extra point. Basically, because to your point, it didn't matter.
Well, listen. Also, that it depends on. There's so many things that go into bad beats perspective, right? So like the Patriots punt return against the Jets to win that game.
That was a good win. Had -3. That was a great win.
Yes. So here's the thing. In my opinion, yes, that is a horrible beat for someone who bet the Jets.
I mean, 3.5, that's disgusting. That's actually disgusting if you had 3.5. Yeah.
It is. However, the way that the game played out,
Sure.
the Jets had 103 yards of total offense.
They sure did. Yep.
Nick Folk missed 2 field goals in that game, which is highly unusual for Nick Folk, who's a pretty money kicker. Like
pretty accurate kicker.
There's a lot of things that happened previously in that game.
The defensive touchdown, like Wilson, the arm going forward, like that was returned for a touchdown.
Exactly.
Nope, actually just comes right back. Yeah.
So there's a lot of other things that happened in that game where it's like, okay, yes, I know you feel miserable on Jets plus 3.5 at this exact moment, but that should not have covered despite the fact that it came down to this play. So it's the, and then someone will call me crazy and they'll be like, no.
Well, I was about to say, how do you think people are going to respond, Rob, when you tell them that? How do you think people are going to react when you tell them that?
Well,
actually, you were dead wrong. Actually, you were wrong. Just look at the game.
Also,
either way,
I bet the Patriots.
Really well.
I bet the Patriots -3, so I don't want to admit that I was in a bad position either.
Dance on their graves, basically.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, well, you had the wrong side.
No.
This is
you guys have I have a very different definition of a bad beat than the general public, and then you guys, I think, like anything where the game is still in play, that's not a bad beat. So, like in that scenario, there was still a chance that the Patriots. So obviously, it was likely that game goes to overtime.
You don't think that was a bad beat, Johnny? So, that one, I know what you're saying.
Hear me out.
Like
What I'm saying
for
is
you, it has to be like guts ripped out at the end. Like that almost has to be it.
Like
that's what that was.
That was definitely a chance where you're like, okay, I should be good if I have Jets 3.5. I should be good. However, you would say I'd still be good, but if the Patriots win the coin toss and get a touchdown on the opening drive, which is well in realm of play for the game, and they should be, in theory, if they win the coin toss, going for a touchdown, then I can't really say like it's a bad beat because I didn't like the game was still in play, right? Anytime there's like a team goes for it, backdoor cover, but like they had a chance to still win the game and they're trying hard, I don't consider that a bad beat. I consider bad beats. Like,
man, your standards are high, man. If you're holding 3.5 on a game that's going to go to overtime, plus 3.5.
Yeah, I don't consider that a bad
beat. There are
that's
6
not a
outcomes.
win in my mind. I don't.
There are
consider
6
that.
outcomes scoring wise, and you only lose on one. like safety each way, no problem. Field goal each way, no problem. Touchdown one way, no problem.
Or
you lose on 1 out of 6,
or a tie. 7 outcomes, but
a tie. Sorry, 7 outcomes. Yeah, duh. Thank you. And so 1 out of 7, and you're like, no, that's totally cool. That's great.
Fine.
No problem.
I have to have it graded in my mind as a winner.
Okay.
And then like that game I would have never graded as a winner because the game's not over yet. You know what I mean?
Okay. I actually don't mind that definition. I actually don't mind where you would have already graded it as a winner.
If
you graded it as I'll give you some. Well, here's the thing. I have so many bets where there's so many worse losses than that I can't call that a bad loss. For example, just yesterday alone, lost like 2 games that I basically lost 3 games on an under that went to overtime in college basketball, as Rob was saying. And it's like one of the games was like a 12-point game in the final like 3 minutes. And I'm like, okay, I'm good here as long as I literally said, I'm good here as long as it goes to OT. And then it goes to OT. That is a way worse beat in my mind because that Jets game, I would have been saying like, all right, this game's going to OT. I need to sweat this coin toss. Here's what I'll say. If the Jets had won the coin toss in OT and got the ball first, then I would consider it a bad beat. Because then it's like,
man. Well, I had to go that much later.
But that happened twice to me. So that happened to me twice last year. Yes,
right.
I had the Bills against the Bills against the Bucks. I had the Patriots against the Cowboys. So that was the worst. I hated that one. That was the worst one. Chargers Chiefs second meeting was another one that worked the same way. I had 3 of those last year. There were only 3 last year. Yeah, and I had 2. They both went against me. That was really fun. But like to Patriots me, those are horrible. But the Jets one, like there's also like the context of the play, right? Because why the hell do the Jets punt the ball to the middle of the field on that play? Like I'm telling you, why were they more aggressive in regulation? They ran the ball on 2nd down with 1:20 to go. But if I'm the special teams coordinator, I'm sending my punter out and I'm saying, blast this ball out of bounds. Don't even give this guy a chance to return it. Because like, why would you? Well, that's the only way you're going to lose at that point. It's literally the only way you're going to lose. So I was surprised the Patriots had a guy back. Didn't you think the Patriots were going to go for the block there? I did. They had no time left. For sure. I thought they were going to go for the block. Okay, but let me give you this is a bad beat. Okay, this is a bad beat for me. I'll give you an example. Okay, that game, Carolina Panthers, Atlanta Falcons, when DJ Moore caught the touchdown, but then the helmet settled. Oh, yes. Okay, so I have in that game, like
basically the play was Marcus Mariota under on rushing yards. Okay. Now, for everyone's going to shame me, to prop bet, whatever. Just it was for a good amount. Okay. Anyways,
who's going to shame you on
Yeah,
that?
I'm not. No one.
People shame you on a Marcus Mariota prop?
No, fair enough. So I had Marcus Mariota under. I believe the under is like 35.5, something like that. He's at maybe 14, 15 rushing yards. So he's set unless he takes off for a big run, and it's late in the game. So Atlanta goes and basically is going to end the game with a first down. They don't. They end up giving the ball back to Carolina. So I'm like, okay, I'm good here though, because Carolina's down 6 and it's the last drive. Hail Mary, obviously, to DJ Moore. He catches it. I'm like, okay, no good. Now I'm potentially going to OT if they miss this extra point. But what are the chances of miss extra point? Slams his helmet down, backs up the extra point. Eddie Pinheiro, miss extra point. Now we're into OT. I'm like, holy, okay, whatever. Still good. Falcons ball. I'm like, oh no. Falcons ball. He could run. Nothing. Punt. Okay. Should be good now. Now we should be good. I think they actually turned it over.
Yeah.
Panthers now driving well in field goal range. I'm like, all right, now I'm good. Eddie Pinheiro, field goal. Missed. Give it back. Third down. Marcus Mariota, 33-yard rush. Into field goal range. Next play, Young Hoku, field goal. That's a bad beat in my mind because that game should have been over 4 times. So, like, in my mind, that's graded as a winner 4 times. It was graded as a winner the second Carolina got the ball with attempting the Hail Mary, let alone that far in. So that's like...
That still bothers you, doesn't it, Johnny? That one bothers you a lot still,
but
right?
once you have, like... This is what I'm saying. Like, I have stupid beats like that, then now I can't get mad about, like... And I did have, honestly, a small position on the Jets there. So I actually was a bad beat for me, but if you get to your standards, but I'm not going to complain about that one. I'll complain about worse ones than that.
Well, can I pitch you one real quick? Because I know we want to
hear.
talk about other stuff, so we don't have to spend.
No,
any time
honestly,
on
though,
bad beats, but
this is the best.
This is a
beat?
real bettors conversation right here. Like, this is
sure. Well, let me pitch you a game. So NBA last week, I bet the over in the Wizards Heat game, and the game was trending under like the entire time.
Went to OT. I remember this game.
Goes to overtime. I won't remember off the top of my head what I needed for the over. Let's say 12. Something like that. Something that could easily be achieved in an NBA overtime. Wasn't a certainty, but was like pretty close to a certainty given how much scoring there usually is in an NBA overtime. For people who did not see that game, the score in overtime at the conclusion of the 5 minutes of overtime was 3-2. I've never seen, I think that was actually the lowest scoring overtime in 50 years or something. So is it a bet? I was dead the whole game. Had no chance. The terrible bet. Like, didn't get the best of the number. Horrible result. Never going to win. Goes to overtime. So I kind of should win at this point if I get a normal amount of scoring.
Horrible.
And then
beat.
I get 3-2. Is that
a
bad beat?
Horrible beat, because, and I'll tell you why. As soon as that game goes to OT, as soon as that game goes to OT, in your mind, winner. Went to OT. Winner now.
Right.
Only
so it's about my mind. That's what it's about.
I'm saying, like, you could grade...
What's happening up here?
You could grade that as a winner when that game goes to OT and you only need like 12 points. 12, like, I would say the key for overtime
I'm guesstimating it could have been more. It was definitely a very, very achievable. It was not going to take 23 or something to get over.
I go when I'm sweating in over in NBA OT. The baseline I use is 16.5. If it's over, if I need less than 16.5, I'm like, I'm good here.
Wow, that's very mathematical of you.
If I need 16, I'm like, okay, it's close. If I need 17, I'm like, all right, I gotta sweat.
Is it really that fine of a line? If you need 16, you're okay, and if you need 17, you're like, I'm doomed.
It's all mental.
That's really the line.
If I need 17, I'm like, all right, we gotta like get me some points here. Points. I don't care who. It's like that.
Is this actually based off of math though?
It's based off.
Well, those are numbers. Those are numbers. So it is kind of
based on my betting historicals over the past 10 years.
You followed enough overtimes to know
that 16.
Did you pull in overtime data just to be able to like say this now and just to have this frame of reference?
This is actually
just to be miserable. I pulled overtime data just to be a terrible, miserable person.
I don't even know if this is accurate. This is not data driven. This is just my betting history. I feel confident. I can get 16 in OT.
16.5.
I don't feel confident about getting 17.
It's for me, if I pull up Expedia to book a vacation because of the way that I lost the game, that's how I consider it a bad beat. That's usually the way it goes for me. It's like I can't do much more of this. I cannot
moment, basically.
Yeah, like it's there. Yeah.
What's your worst beat then, Ken? All time?
Do you remember your worst?
You know what's really stupid? I remember like my friend's worst because I like saw it, if that makes any sense.
That's even worse. What is it?
It's the worst. It's the worst. And people will be like, no, mine's worse. This is the worst thing ever. And it's really conventional, I guess. Like I've definitely lost on like half court shots and like 3/4 court shots at the end of quarters, whatever. I lost a total. Andre Drummond made a half court shot when he played for the Pistons, I guess. I guess when he played for the Pistons, Andre Drummond made a half court shot to lose me a quarter total one time. Like
that's brutal.
Like, what is that? What am I supposed to do
in a regular season game? Like a regular,
right?
When he was with like Pistons
honestly,
or something?
You in a recent, like especially betting a lot of awards, you know what a disgusting award beat is? Abaji winning outstanding player of the Final Four instead of David McCormick is an absolutely disgusting like miscarriage of justice. Where like Seth Davis, like Andy Katz, Van Pelt, all these guys are on Twitter like, why didn't McCormick win? And you have no idea who votes for the award. It's a small panel of writers who were at the game. They put the ballot in like before the game's over normally, and you never know who they are, and you don't know what the voting was. You don't even know, did he win 5-0? Like, who voted? These college basketball writers, this thing is absolutely, this smells so bad that this happened.
That could have been a true Vegas knows moment. That could have been a Vegas. I was in Vegas for that.
It's not
one.
Vegas, so it's like it's like the writers know.
Writers
That's
know.
what it is.
Hashtag writers know.
Hashtag writers know. There's no world where Abaji wins the award. It makes no sense.
That's
mine. I'll tell you the worst one though. Let me tell you my friends were okay. This is just a conventional total.
Let's hear it.
I believe I'm going to say it's the 2011 NCAA tournament. If it seems like I reference that tournament a lot, it's because it's my favorite sporting event and I go to Vegas for it every year. I think it was 11. You could even look this up. Butler played Bucknell in a 5-12 game. It was the first game on Thursday. It was noon window, noon Eastern time window. And my friend had the under, which was, I think, 126, something like that. And you can look at the play-by-play of this game, and it is the worst college basketball end game I have ever seen. And I have seen, and people are listening being like, I guarantee I have one that's worse. No, you don't. This is the worst one I've ever seen from a when they fouled standpoint, when they started the foul game, how long they kept it up, and the stakes of the game and what the total ended up being and how it eclipsed the total. I want to say they were on like 93 with 2 minutes left or something.
And the coach did he have as the total, your buddy?
It's like mid 120s, something like that. Like 124, 125, something like that, if memory serves me correctly. And to watch this play out over a series of like 25 minutes, because it takes forever and nobody had used timeouts yet. This thing took like a half hour to play out. And when it's the worst thing, and everyone who bets college basketball and watches it can relate to this. Thankfully, I think a lot of people who bet college basketball don't watch it. Please don't watch it if you bet on it. When this starts happening, the feeling that you get, like, because the coach starts fouling with 2:20 left in the game. You're like, what is he going to stop fouling the next possession? Of course not. It starts a chain of events that's like only really ending with you losing, basically. And you're helpless. You need them to get up by 30 so that they stop fouling. And that didn't happen.
How much were they up? In like a lot, you're saying?
It kept staying in that perfect margin, right? Of that like 7-10. It kept staying in that the whole time.
Yep.
The whole time. And there's a college basketball game every day that fits this description. But this was, of all those types of games where that happens, the foul game and the way a college basketball end game works and how coaches just don't call off the dogs ever. This is the worst one I've ever seen. And my friend who was with me, who goes with me to Vegas every year, this was his biggest bet of the tournament, and it was the first game, and this happened. And like, what do you do the rest of the year? It ruined the tournament. Like, what do you do the rest of the day? Like, what, bet on more games? I mean, yeah, sure, but it was gruesome.
You just don't want to bet anymore after that.
I'm actually looking at it now. So the total was 123 in the game. It landed 124. The score at the half was 21-14 for Butler.
35
points
in the first half.
In the first half.
30.
And I'm reading the box scores of the games from the local papers and stuff like that, patriotleague.org, and it's all like,
Love patriotleague.org.
This player finished with 17 points all in the last 259 of the game.
Right. No one talks about this game, by the way. This has been forgotten in history. And there are games that like have that shelf life. Like everyone talks about the Belk Bowl still. And I'm like, who gives a shit about the Belk Bowl? Have you heard about Butler Bucknell in the NCAA tournament? Like, are you serious? This is the worst thing. I didn't even bet it, but I watched it happen to someone, like someone I like. I was so sympathetic. I think everyone can relate to that.
This was the 2013 NCAA tournament. So when you tell the story again, Ken, you'll remember. And you also have like you have a very good memory when it comes to this stuff, probably because of all the production and so on and so forth. But the darkest for me, and I'll never, listen, it might not have been the worst beat ever, but I remember just sitting like where I sat watching the game for hours afterwards, not even doing anything, was right around that time. And I think it was the New Mexico Bowl between Washington State and Colorado State. I don't know if you remember this game. Washington State was winning something absurd. It was like 45-13 in the fourth quarter.
So this is a big comeback. That's
huge
like
comeback.
This game. Okay.
It was like 5 touchdowns in the fourth quarter for Colorado State. And I've just watched, it's one of those where in your head, you're like, all right, I already won this money. What else is happening today? What other bowl games am I betting? I was not a sophisticated bettor at that time where I had bet the bowl games ahead of time, like a week ahead of time. I was like, okay, on to the next bowl game. Like, what am I wagering my winnings on? And you're just watching Colorado State score touchdown after touchdown. It was a Mike Leach coach game, which I remember as well. But that was, it was absurd. I'm actually very interested in people's bad beat stories. If you're on YouTube, in the comments, please, your worst bad beat ever. We'll talk about some
and
of
with
them.
video.
Let me show you.
Like, to me, it's like,
I'll show you guys my worst beat right now. So my worst overall beat was the Kenyon Drake receiving yards. I told the story in the podcast before.
It's always props with you, Johnny.
Someone's going to shame
always
for all these
some
props.
ridiculous
Props get way worse beats than games.
I actually agree with that.
There's just so much variance.
Oh, I'm sure that's true. But we also, it's like tougher for me to identify with that, I guess, too, because I don't watch the game that way. So it's tough for me to be like, oh, that must have been so bad. So what was the Drake one?
So really quick, because I've told it before, but basically, like, game was over. I had Kenyon Drake under receiving yards. He was basically at nothing. It was going to win for sure. Miami Dolphins got a touchdown. I graded it as a win in my mind. Bills, they onside kick to the Bills. Bills return the onside kick to the house with like a couple seconds left for no reason. Miami gets the ball. They drop back. They have one play, garbage time. He dumps it off to Kenyon Drake. It's a holding penalty. So I'm like, whatever. It's coming back anyways. He runs just enough yards, gets tackled. Ref comes up. I'm like, I'm still good. He's like, the game is over. The penalty will be disregarded. He disregards the penalty.
Disregarded?
I swear to God.
Whoever says that?
I'll pull it
Nobody
up.
ever says that.
I've never
word.
seen it before. I've never seen it before. And then it says penalty will be disregarded. He waves off the penalty. And then I'm like, no, there's no way they count those yards. There's no chance. And then they end up counting the yards. I lost my bet.
Right? But you're like, you know what I can't disregard? Having to Venmo somebody in a couple of days. I can't disregard that.
That was my worst.
Tell that to the local bookie. Hey,
right.
This week's bets are disregarded.
Yeah,
that was my worst beat when it comes to like bet size involved in it. But my actual worst beat, I'll show Rob on the camera now. We have to send it to Ken. I didn't have a ton of money on it, so it's like it doesn't stick with me. It's more of a laugher now. But I had in the All-Star game, 2016 All-Star game, Steph Curry under on points. He was under by 2 points, and then this happened. This is the very end of the game, Rob.
So the title is Stephen Curry ends All-Star Weekend with a splash.
This is Steph. Game is over. And I lost on that.
Mid-court, jacks up
he sure did.
The game was over. He was dribbling it out. All-Star game was over. Fans started to get up. The coaches got up. People started to kind of enter the court, but Steph was dribbling it out at half court. Kevin Durant comes up to him and he goes, "You won't shoot it." And then he shoots it with like buzzer beater and splashes it as a lobber. Not even a real shot. Lobs it. Zach, I'm sending you the description.
Wow.
This has to go in the description on the YouTube.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Send it. You know what? Send this to Ken right now, Rob, if you can. Send this to Ken just so you can get his live reaction because you got to see this.
All right, I will send it to Ken.
Just watch it real quick. It was
or just throw it in the chat in what we're using.
Oh yeah,
you can throw it in the chat too if you want.
Yep, that's a good idea.
The All-Star game. The funniest part about this was I almost went to the game because it was in Toronto. And then, like, last second, I'm like, nah, I'm not going to go. I didn't end up going.
That would have been
because I didn't go and buy the tickets, I put more money on the bets that I was, like, fun bets at the time. And then I was like, oh my God, if I was there for this, I would have been actually crying.
They would have had to carry me out of the stadium, out of the arena. Like I would have been sitting in my seat when they're coming to mop the floors and sweep all the popcorn up underneath, and they're like, "You're gonna have to leave," and I'd be like, "No,
melted in my chair.
No, we can't leave." You know,
melted.
Like, no, you're gonna have to leave.
I wish we could show this stuff on the air, but everyone click the description. This video that is in there for YouTube, it's quite literally like 10 seconds. You will understand it in 10 seconds.
You know, the sad thing is, I could probably fill 8 to 12 hours on the worst weeks of my life.
Yeah, we probably go 20 episodes.
And honestly, when I think back to them, they're like the worst bets ever as well. Like horrible. Like I remember losing a 13-point teaser in the NFL, 4-team teaser, where Zach Crockett ran the Oakland Raiders at the time had no reason to not kneel the ball. They had no reason. It was a game against the Buffalo Bills, but Zach Crockett was like a backup running back, and he came in the game and he was fired up. Like he had like a carry to ice the game, the play before, and he was fired up about it, and they fed him the ball one more time for no reason. The game was done. The Bills couldn't stop the clock, and they ended up winning by like 24 and killed my horrible teaser play. I'm ashamed to even talk about what that I teased the Bills to like plus 19 or something like that.
2006, Alouettes versus Rough Riders. No, I'm just kidding. Imagine I had that.
Do you think people at this point, is this the point where people are like, guys, we got it?
Yeah.
No, I actually, you know what, Ken? I actually think as sick as our audience is, I know, because I get the DMs on a weekly basis about how every show went, so on and so forth. We see the comments. I literally think there would be people out there that would listen to us talk about bad beats for 4 hours.
Really?
Like I think
sometimes I think it's like your fantasy team. Like people are like, well, that's great, but I want to hear about my
fantasy's very different than this.
Yeah,
nobody wants to hear about anyone's fantasy teams. I come in the office Monday morning and Johnny's like, oh, you'll never believe how I lost. It's like, buddy, I don't care.
3 receptions lost by a half.
I don't care. Kadarius Toney got hurt. It's like, yeah, he does. You know, he always gets.
He does do that. He does do that from time to time.
You know, like that's my team got injured. All right, let's ship.
Yes. You'll never believe it. In an NFL game, someone got hurt.
Someone got injured, and I lost by 1 point.
If we could actually show the video for this, it would actually be a good episode, like breaking down. But like you can't show the video, which does hinder the content.
It's true.
You guys got the DMCA strike. You got the YouTube police coming at you and stuff.
The strike would wash away in 30 days. As long as we don't get 3 strikes.
No, we can't.
But you know what that'd be called? That's a gamble.
It is a gamble.
It's a gamble.
It could
That's
be
a bad beat.
It could be
if
a bad beat
if
we lose
strike.
the
Yeah.
That would be tough.
So Ken, Rob, we had Sammy P on the podcast a couple weeks back, and he's also involved in the content space. What we asked him was kind of like, how do you feel about the current state of the sports betting content? We obviously just ripped off probably was 20 minutes talking about bad beats, so we might be in this bad batch now. But Ken, you're in the content space. You do really well. What are your thoughts on kind of the state of content right now? Where is it going? Do you ever have the urge to call out other people's shows that might not necessarily be as accurate, as truthful, stuff like that? What's your thoughts on the whole thing?
So I think, let's see, how do I want to answer this? I think that there was a time in early in my sports betting content career where I would have been really eager to just shit post all the time and tweet at people and argue with them and whatever, basically troll, which is what honestly 99% of Twitter is at this point, basically just shit posting and trolling constantly. And it's fun. And there was definitely I trolled Sam, I think, on something. I don't even know if Sam remembers this. I vaguely remember it 5 years ago, and I don't even know what it was about. And I'm sure it was really stupid, and I'm sure I should not have sent the tweet. And I did, and I did it. And so there was definitely a time when I would be more likely to do that. And just, I don't think it's that I'm maybe it's that I'm almost 40. I'll be 40 in a couple of years. Maybe it's that, or just, I don't know. Actually, I probably know what it is. It's probably that I'm doing really well now. The show is going really well. I'm very happy. I have 2 kids. We have a really good life. Things are awesome. I am doing as well betting as I've ever done. I know more about what I think I have an advantage in. And so all of that's going really well. So if that's true, Like, why the fuck am I going to go troll somebody? Like, honestly, like, let's be really honest, other than just for 5 seconds, it makes me feel really good. Like, and maybe, like Kanish comes along and likes it or something, like maybe somebody like that, right? Aside from that, just like, why? Like, what's the point? And people be like, well, because like they need to be held accountable, and be like, I'll actually, I brought up Kanish. This I just came to me, and I love Kanish. He comes on our show. I kind of know him. He's great.
Uncle K.
But he has gone at two people in the last year, Bill Simmons and Dave Portnoy. Do you think when they write like the biography of Bill Simmons and Dave Portnoy, they're going to like get to the end of the chapter and be like, and things were going great. And then Kanish showed up and like everything fell apart for these mighty giants. Like, do you think anybody's actually like, yeah, I mean, it's cool to just like poke fun at somebody and it makes you feel good. I totally get it. It happens. It's not unique to sports betting, obviously. It's not unique to life. Like my daughter's in kindergarten, in 4th grade, there's a bully right now. Like, this is the same dynamic. And when they write those biographies, it's like, nah, man, like those guys are doing okay. The world is going to keep spinning. Nothing is going to happen. Most importantly, not only is nothing going to happen to these people, you're not actually engaging in a dialogue. If the purpose is to change their mind about something, Twitter is probably the worst tool to use to try to do that. Everyone's so firmly entrenched. No one's changing their mind on Twitter. It has nothing to do with actually having a conversation. The point of the app is not to have a conversation. The point is to score points. Like, that's the point. And if that's the point, then like, why are you really doing, like, I'm going to go at somebody who has another betting show. I'm not trying to change their mind, or if I am, then I'm the idiot for trying to enact change that way. Like, I would reach out to them privately and be like, hey, like, when you talk about, just so when you talk about the public or whatever, like, here's kind of actually what that means or why it doesn't matter, whatever. Like, that's so much more productive, right? So I think maybe that's like a lame answer because it makes me sound like some like grown up in an ivory tower or whatever. But as I've gotten older, I just do that way less because it's like, and I've met some of these people like outside of doing content, and like they're nice people. Like, this isn't, the shit posting feels good when you do it,
yes,
but it's like empty calories, right? It's like not actually gonna, like, there's no fulfillment out of it. So for me, it's just like, we're gonna do our show, we're gonna try to do it really well, hopefully we're able to do that, and beyond that, cool, see you guys. Like, I'm going to go be over here living. I'm going to go do some stuff away from the computer. And the phone.
I get that. Honestly, we think the exact same way, but I think you have a lot more self-control.
Very mature.
Oh, definitely.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and I don't even have that much more than you. It took a long time to get to that point, right? It took a long time.
The amount of times I type into Twitter over the course of a day and then backspace the entire thing. Yeah. It's at least a couple every day. But I get to a point where I'm like, okay, I just can't take this anymore, and we need to do an episode on this Simon Hunter interview because I can't handle that people are going to watch.
And you're bringing it into the pod, like you're like shit potting.
Well,
like,
but
that's what you're.
But
doing.
That's my best forum to do it, because you're completely right. If you do it on social, if I do this on Twitter, the people that I'm going after already have established followings, sometimes bigger than mine, right? So I can't go after someone with 50K followers and say, no, this is completely wrong, because there's just going to be an army of people who come to defense. And then I'm just going to be engaged in like this mini Twitter battle for days.
Well, you're only engaged if you want to be engaged, Rob. You can just choose to not be engaged. You don't have to be.
You are correct in that. And lots of people have given me that advice. Right. It is more difficult for me to actually do that than it might be for you. But
you have agency in that situation. Like, you are in control of what is happening. Like, you actually have the agency to decide what happens next.
Right.
Which is not, maybe it doesn't seem like that.
But this is actually why I love doing sports betting content, because it provides me with an outlet to do that. And I don't have to deal with like the repercussions and the Twitter wars. And like, honestly, somebody's going to find a Circles Off episode that we did from a year ago, 2 or 3 years from now, and they're going to watch it and say, hey, this is why reverse line movement doesn't matter. And they're going to be like, oh, this actually makes a lot of sense. And if we can do that, it's mission accomplished. But
you'll probably hear some other shit and be like, this makes no sense.
Well, sure. But I'll never know that they think that, right? Okay. And I don't have to hear that and go argue with them. But it's really challenging for you in your particular shoes. You have Nick Costas, your co-host, introduces you every day. as your favorite handicapper's favorite handicapper.
It's pretty clever. He's
It
really
is
good at that stuff.
It is
That's
actually
his
smart.
area of expertise, is like talking and like clever turns of phrase and that kind of. It's I can't think of any of that stuff. And then
Would it be regarded to wishing you minimal sweats, winning bets, and the absolute very best of luck?
Johnny
He did workshop that for like a long time.
Johnny loves that, by the way.
It's the best line
It's
in
the best.
podcast sign off
Yes.
history.
Hey, buy a t-shirt. You better be betshop.com. Yeah.
There you go.
You guys have a shop?
Plug.
How
Go
does
plug.
it? How does the shop do?
How does
guys-
the shop do?
Yeah, you
it's
guys
only
do-
been up for like a couple weeks, I think, like 3 weeks.
Okay.
And I think it's doing really well, but it's about frame of reference, right? You know, I don't know if the company has ever had like a swag outlet before, so really well for us might be terrible for Barstool or something.
Of course, yeah,
Like,
you're
might
not
be
going to
ter-
sell
or
enough-
terrible for whatever some other outlet.
Yep.
But we're working at it, and the thing for us that works well for clothing is just like Nick he just says stuff constantly that works really well. It's like brief, small number of words, clever, like gets the point across. That stuff's really good for t-shirts. That stuff really good for merchandise. You can't put my 2-minute rant about the offensive player of the year market on a hoodie. Like,
Right.
You can't do that. Like, but Nick's really good with that stuff.
We need a good luck shirt, something that you could just wear for good luck.
Yeah.
Nah, we're pessimistic. We want bad luck. We
Yeah,
want,
bad
like,
luck.
Bad beats.
Bad beats.
Like bad things happening to everybody. Like Mariota Russian props loses.
We gotta have,
That's all.
yeah, like honestly, a merch line for bettors could work, but it would have to be something like, "Don't talk to me. I just got backdoored on the thing." I mean, maybe that doesn't work out.
That has a lot of implications,
Yeah,
but I appreciate where you're going with that,
Strip
Johnny.
that
That's good.
from
Yeah.
stricken that from the record, please. I would not be wearing that.
Ken, what I was getting at though is
God bless you that was the first thing you thought of. That
it
was
actually
really
is
funny. That's
hilarious.
great.
And honestly, it's a great shirt regardless. Even if it has a second implication, that's what makes it even better.
Right.
Honestly,
Well,
right?
can I ask you a question about the Simon episode or whatever?
Yeah,
of
If
course.
this would apply to any episode, it doesn't have to be unique to that one. When you do that episode, do you think you're changing people's minds about stuff? Like realistically?
I think I am. It's a minority of people, but I honestly do. Yes.
Sometimes I think with that content, I think you're, and this isn't like you, I'm not trying to single you out because this is all of us kind of collectively having this conversation. I think you kind of play to your base when you do that, right?
100%.
Right. So the people that listen to you already probably kind of like you and don't like him. So if you're kind of like going at him for something, and this, I don't even mean to single, I don't know Simon, so I don't even want to single him out. If you go at someone and your audience is already kind of trained to like distrust, like not like that person, then you're really like getting them foaming at the mouth, basically like behind you. And it's like, all right, but is that the point? And that's the point of a lot of it. That's the point of a lot of content, period. Right. But is that, I don't know if somebody on the other side, I don't even know if there is another side. Sometimes I think this is a giant straw man argument. Like, is there somebody on the other side who thinks this stuff is legit? And they're like, well, now that I'm listening to Rob, I get it. And like, this is changing my mind. Do you think that's happening?
So I've gotten DMs from people who have made that case to me that said,
Okay.
I do listen to this and I've, and now I see it in a different light, different perspective so for me, that's like mission accomplished.
Well, that's really good. And I'm not saying that because I think it's one way. I just think that's like an important thing to think about. And if it's just like you want to play to your base, I mean, welcome to any fan base of any show. I mean, what's like, like what are the highest ratios? Like, do you think Ben Shapiro's not playing to his base with this stuff? Like guys playing the greatest hits every time. I mean, it's just, that's not because it
Right.
works. Because it works. And there are examples on the left do the same. You watch Chris Hayes and Rachel Maddow. Are they not playing the hits every time? Like, you don't think Trump's a huge part of their content too?
Right.
It's the same thing. So I wouldn't begrudge you for doing that. I'm curious if you really think it's this like noble quest to like enlighten the people that are on the opposite side. Like, I don't know if that's like a reasonable goal to have in the current era of discourse. I don't know if that's going to happen.
So there's a lot of things, me and Johnny talk about our content and what we're going to do for Circles Off pretty regularly. We want to do some stuff that's unique. To me, that was a unique concept in the gambling space, because you do see a lot of reaction videos on YouTube. I consume a ton of them. I watch music reaction videos because I like to live vicariously through the person that's watching that for the first time. And it kind of brings me back to like when I listened to The Pot by Tool for the first time, and then I can see people listening to it for the first time, and it's like, yes, like they get it. This is how I felt. And I wanted to kind of start doing that with reaction type of videos. Now it's a little bit different in the betting space, but it's authentic reactions, right? It's like, this is something that we're viewing and we're reacting to authentically and I think people resonate with that. Like, I think there's something to the human element in terms of like, okay, we can do an educational episode, right? We can talk about whatever, how to use an odd screen. That blew up on Twitter. It's great. Or on YouTube, excuse me. It's great. But that doesn't appeal to a larger audience, so to speak. And I thought that would. Now it's tricky, and I'm very cognizant of, personal attacks, right? And I know how that could come off.
Like
That's
people in glass houses, like you run a media company, it has a lot of people working for it. You really want to like put all of their collective work they've ever done under the microscope, like that's tough too.
Completely agree. But the one thing that bothers me more than anything, and which I will never tolerate ever, and this includes on our platform, The Hammer, is people who misrepresent themselves.
Sure.
And
totally
that's what bothers me, and in particular bothered me about the Simon Hunter interview, is because that's a misrepresentation of what he is. And now he's going and he's getting a massive audience every week with the stuff that he does with Action Network. And people think he's something that he's not. And I honestly, that's what really drives me crazy about the space. I don't care if you go dancing on TikTok and giving out pics and doing whatever.
Find me there, by the way. New video coming out tomorrow. Doing the
that doesn't bother me though. Like different types of content don't bother me as long as the host or whoever's part of that is real with the audience. And that's what I would like to change or try to. I never will be able to personally do this myself, and I'm aware of that.
Hate to break it to you.
Yes.
Yeah, you're not going to affect change in this way, probably.
I agree.
You can do your stuff really well.
Exactly. And if I can get enough people on board, or even a few that say, agreed, I don't want to consume content from people who are inauthentic, then I think it's mission accomplished. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we produce what makes us happy and like stuff that we think is going to be good. And everybody's going to see that differently, right?
I totally agree. I think, the authenticity part of it, I think, is important. And because, I shouldn't even say this. I haven't really been trolled in a while, which has been really nice. What a nice reprieve in my life.
Oh, don't say that now. It might come this week now.
Whatever. Like it comes and goes in waves, right? It's just like whatever way the wind is blowing. Whatever. And but I think what we try to do a good job of on our show, at least, is, and there's one, it's one thing to have like the promotion of the show, which is going to try to make the show like seem awesome, try to make the hosts on the show seem awesome. Like that's the marketing and promotion arm of everything. And I can't really do a lot about that. But what I can do a lot about is how we represent ourselves on the show. And I feel like we go out of our way all the time. And Rob can hopefully vouch for this because he listens a lot. And Johnny actually listens too. Sorry. So I say all the time, like, and I'm supposed to be the expert on the show. I'm like, look, I'm not a professional bettor. Like I'm trying to win betting. I have things that I do pretty well at. Mm-hmm. There are major markets that I don't win at, but are really fun to like bet your opinion on, like NFL sides, for example, or college football. And some years I do really well, and some years I don't. And like, that's what it is. So like, tune in. This is what it is. And we try to be really funny. We try to have an awesome time. We try to have good conversation. We're trying to win, but we're pretty transparent about the fact that like, we don't earn from betting where we could like retire right now and we'd be cool. And Nick does the same thing, to his credit. So like, as long as it's that, and here's the funny thing, we do that, we're the highest rated sports betting podcast that there is. Yep. And that's how we represent ourselves. So to people out there that are like, they think that the path to get a lot of listeners or a lot of clicks or whatever is to be kind of like the old style of gambling content, picks, like promising success, and anything else is like irrelevant. Basically, it's just like, what is the pick? And then how do I like create some kind of a record so that like, that makes me seem really good? Okay. Like you don't actually have to do that. Like maybe that's not actually what everyone wants. Now there are definitely people that want that. You try to cater to them too, but there is a giant audience. And we know, because we know the numbers on our show, there's a giant audience that's just like, the show's really fun. And like, I like thinking about, like, the person listening, I like thinking about sports. I like watching games. I also like betting. And so I listen to the show. Like sometimes it's that simple. It doesn't have to be like something, again, like phony, kind of to your point.
So why I recommend your podcast to other people on a regular basis is because you guys victory lap the wins, but you also don't steer from talking about when it was a bad day the day before.
Sure.
I listened to you last week saying, I'm having a horrible NBA betting year. I don't know what's going on. I'm getting decent numbers, but
a couple weeks ago.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is needed in the space. It's just people who are real. That's it. It's okay to victory lap your wins. That's fine. It's not a problem with why
and mostly because the people listening, but the reason we do that too, Rob, and you have this, the more that you guys will do content too, the more the Hammer does content, it's so much more about the fact that everyone bet it together.
Yes.
Then it's like that I'm smart and you're not.
Yes.
Like who cares? Like if I got the money, I got the money. Like that has nothing to do with this. It's more like, and like I bet a bunch of stuff we don't even do on the show. Like what am I going to do a show and be like, hey, like Joel Embiid had 100 points in 2 games and like one offshore left MVP up and I went and bet it. Like when I do an emergency version of the show where I say that, like that's just not realistic. So it's really like the experience of like we talked about games, we loved this bet. We made it, therefore everyone else on the show also made it that listened.
Right.
And like we all won. So like when we're coming on the show, like that was awesome. The idea is that the person listening is also like, yes, that was awesome. Like we're celebrating that. Like that's supposed to be the idea.
I completely get it. That's what
the
works.
Biggest
Building
wins,
a community.
And you've had this.
Yeah.
Like your biggest wins, you probably don't even talk about on the show sometimes. Like, hey, I just went and won whatever 6 figures on this like NFL side that I jammed this week, whatever. Like you might not even do that on the show because that's not the point. Like that's nothing. Like I won a ton of money on an MLB award that I didn't even talk about on the show. We talked about baseball awards, but I like found this like whatever. I won a bunch of money on this thing. It's like, yeah, like whatever. Like that's not for the show. There's nothing to do with the show.
Agreed. I want to circle back to your favorite handicapper's favorite handicapper. So. Sure. Obviously,
we got off market.
Well, no, it's good. I'm glad this is a conversation more so than an interview. I actually prefer it that way, regardless, no matter what. But obviously, yourself and Nick are aware that in judging by that, favorite handicapper,
there's an implication there.
There's an implication that other people who are handicapping games are basically doing it by using they're not handicapping the games. They're using the plays that you give out on the show. That, if I were in your shoes, we're different people, obviously, would make me irate to the point where I would be blowing these people up, putting them on blast. You don't approach it that way, or at least I don't think you do. How do you deal with that? Like, honestly, is it the same thing as like the Twitter wars where you just accept it and you say, you know what, it's not going to get me anywhere to actually put this person on blast? Does it actually bother you? Curious in terms of, because obviously you're putting a lot of work into handicapping the stuff that you do. And sure, there's people that are essentially freeloading. And as Nick would say, don't be a freeloader. He says it in a different context, but that's essentially what people are doing in this instance.
Right. Well, I mean, the funny thing is like in the NFL pick landscape, I'm probably not the like whale or shark that you would like to be taking picks from. Like if you were going to steal, man, you could steal from smarter people than me if you're going to do that. But just in terms of, but it's also easy, right? One thing I like to think I do well in the show is I make a good case for something. And so it's really the case that gets yanked. Because if you're doing a 2-minute video or you're on a pod or whatever, the case is what you're interested in. Like the pick is whatever, but you need the content. Like you got to fill minutes. And if somebody early in the week has an angle on a game that seems like it sounds pretty smart, whether it's smart or not, then that's like the valuable nugget of information, right? Is to just kind of yoink that. So just how do I deal with that? Yeah, does it bother me? I mean, to a certain extent, like, Nick and I will share videos that we see where it's just like, man, this person even used the same wording. Like they said the terms the same way. I'm just like, God, like, could we at least like polish this up a little bit? Like there's only 2 sides to a game. We can all pick the same side of the game. That's not the thing. It's just funny to hear the terms and just be like, well, come on. Like, where did that come from? How we talk about like what the market implies about a game. Like if a team's favored by more than a touchdown, they have to win by margin. Just like how we have those conversations. Sure, it bothers me, but just I'll tell like a really quick story. So I had a Patreon, I don't know, like 3 years ago or something before I did the show as like an alternative revenue stream while I was doing other stuff. And I wrote a post on there about a methodology for creating power rankings for I think at the time it was for college basketball, but it could apply to all sports. And it wasn't, this isn't going to beat the market, but like, here's a really good way to just create like an updated set of power ratings. It's really easy to do. Here's kind of how I did it. And I got a note from somebody like a month later. They said, hey, I felt like I just signed up for your Patreon and it's really good. Thank you. I didn't have to add that part. That just made me sound good. And then, and they were like, I've seen this post somewhere. Like, I've seen this. And I go, what do you mean? And they go, I bought this college basketball betting guide from this guy on Twitter. And here, let me find it for you, and sent it to me. And I've like never had anything like this happen before, especially at that time. Cause like, I didn't have a huge Twitter following, whatever. And it's the post that I wrote for Patreon, copy pasted into a Word document and sold. And it's literally, and it's so funny because like it would be easier to steal if you would just put some effort into it. Yeah. Like there's an anecdote in there about me at Richmond where I went to college with like first person pronouns. Like, I'm just like, right, it's like clearly my work, like not even close. Like there would be such an easy way to paraphrase this and I would have no idea. And that person would have had no idea. And just the laziness of the attempts like really set me off. Like I'm sure people, like everyone takes from each other all the time, honestly, to a certain extent. That's fine. Like maybe it's not fine, but it happens. And what are we going to do about it? That one just like, I mean, I just snapped basically. So like called the person out on Twitter all the time, ended up in a conversation with them, like made them like refund everybody who had ever bought it. The funniest thing is that person had like a big following. I'm pretty sure they had some other scandal because of course they did. They had some other scandal happen like a year later. And I don't even know if they're on there anymore. Like I haven't even checked in a really long time. I haven't heard the name in a while. It doesn't matter what the name is. But I would say the difference between then and now is then I hadn't like made it yet. So when you think you're really good at something and all of these people are ahead of you, and this is true in any industry, and there's all these, or any company you work at, you like look at your bosses, you're like, I could do like such a better job than these guys. Like, oh man, like this drives me nuts. And when you haven't gotten there yet, that stuff's going to bother you all the time. When like maybe your boss takes your idea at a meeting or something, like in any company or whatever, be like, man, like that was my idea, whatever. It's always going to drive you crazy until you make it. And then when you do, it's like, who cares? Like, who cares? Like, this is literally not impacting in any way our show, how much money I make, anything about my life. And all I can worry about is my stuff. Like if other people want to get successful, whether it's me or by somebody else, by taking that approach, I can't do anything about that. Like they're just going to do it and maybe they become successful off of it, which is whatever, but like, at least it's not impacting me in any way. So I always feel like it's a lot easier once you're kind of like set in a space, and and that could be true. It doesn't have to be true in betting. It could be true in anything.
Yeah. I mean, it's unique to your personality, I think, as well, because I hear you tell the same story. All that's going through my head is how I would approach that situation, which is completely different. But that's why I asked you, because obviously you're your own person, and I respect the way that you approach things overall. I think one of the challenges, probably for your show in particular, Ken, is you guys put out picks very early in the week, right? You talk about NFL on Mondays, and most other shows don't do that. And what I've particularly noticed in the space, and I do this myself, so out there for anyone who's interested, I start to do my NFL content usually around Wednesdays or Thursdays of every week. I'm in a sense, a mathematician, right? Like I'm coming up with numbers on games, and now I have to apply context to those games to sell them, essentially. Because I cannot just go out and say, well, my number is -4 in this game, so obviously I'm going to bet -3. No one is interested in that. They want why your number is -4. Where do you see a difference in market? I consume a ton of content in the space. Part of the reason why is because there's a lot of good content out there, and there's people that think about things in a different way. I think people can learn from that. I always make it a goal of mine, if I'm going to use something that I heard on someone else's podcast, to just credit them and say, I heard this on this, and I think it's a great point, rather than try to paraphrase it and sell it as my own type of thing. And I think that's where, like, if I consume a dozen NFL picks podcasts on a weekly basis, there's so much overlap between how people sell a game, right? It's all the same points. And I think they originate somewhere, and then they just get taken and manipulated a little bit, and no one's giving credit to the previous person. And then that one gets taken and manipulated a little bit, but it's all the same points, the same arguments for every single team or game. And I think a lot of that originates with you guys, particularly because you're the first to put out content on a weekly basis. There's probably some that are also on Mondays, but not quite to the same extent and as large as yours. So that, and it's a credit to you. It's a testament to your personality. But if I knew that and I was the guy doing the Monday stuff and then listening to all this stuff later in the week, it would
throw some head fakes out there. You're going to be like, oh, man.
I would never do that to my audience, ever. But it would cross my mind, right? It would cross
Tampa's
my mind.
-3. Love Cleveland. It's definitely going off 3 the other way. Be like, it's more likely to go up.
So I've never done this before, but how about intentionally just throwing out a fake stat? Like you know,
Okay.
you like Tampa -3 against Cleveland. That's fine. You tell people you like Tampa, but then you just throw out a random fake stat about Tampa. Little do you know they're third in success rate over the last 4 weeks.
Sounds great. Sounds totally realistic, right?
And then see how often that appears on other pods over the course of the week.
Not bad. By the way, I only said Tampa's going to go up from 3 because it already did. It wasn't that I definitely knew that at the time. I was actually quite perplexed why it didn't go up to 3.5, like right at open.
Yes.
When us small fish are biting, I was like, really? I was just looking around like, really? Nobody on this one? Really? And honestly, in a lot of those cases, I'd say I'm the idiot. But the funny thing, Rob, to your point, so you're just talking about like kind of buttering me up, basically, like, oh, you guys do all this early content, everybody takes it, whatever. The hard part for me is because look, like, let's be really honest, the limits early in the week are really low.
Yep.
The people that you're competing against to make bets are dumber. That's a bad word. Not as smart as the people that are betting later in the week. Still smart people. I mean, I bet early in the week. I don't want to think of myself as a moron. And like, you know, it's easier on Monday. Like, let's be realistic. If you like know what you're doing, you know how easy it is on Monday to be like, this is going to move here, or like this injury report is likely to say this, or like this number opened, you know, whatever, like that kind of a conversation. Now that's that's my favorite conversation to have because things are going to move. Like there's stuff to talk about. The hard conversation for me is Friday or Sunday morning. We do a show Sunday morning before the games. And look, I like betting my opinion, especially on the NFL, right? Like it's just, I like betting my opinion on the NFL, even if it's not like the number's going to move in my favor. It's just fun. And I think a lot of people like betting their opinion on the NFL because it's fun. So it's in that way, it's easy to do a show on Sunday morning. At the same time, by the time we get to Sunday morning, like what's left that's like that I feel like really like, man, this is a great bet. Like this is a really good idea. Everyone all week has had the chance to bet this or has bet it the opposite way to create this number. It's really tough to show up and just be like, I know what no one else knows, that it's Sunday at 12:30 and this is the key to unlocking your NFL fortune, right? Like that's really tough.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, Ken, because a lot of people think like I'm a massive NFL fan. I know every stat, I know every player and every team. I watch college, I know all the players, like, and they're like, I'm going to be able to beat this and bet into this league and win. But they do it in the wrong way. They'll be like betting on Sunday, right? When everything's shaped. However, as you mentioned, like if you were a massive, massive fan of any sport, you know the sport inside and out. Take NFL, for example. Betting on Monday, you actually can get an edge, right? Because you can probably follow a few things closer than market.
Even just quarterbacks, Johnny. Like just going into this week, if Sunday night you sit down and you're like, what are really significant things that happened today that will shape the market for this week? You could have done it 2 weeks ago with Josh Allen, right? But this week you would have sat down, you would have been like, all right, what are some significant things? Stafford is concussed again, probably really unlikely he plays because it's a second concussion. And also they're terrible and they probably shouldn't play him anyway. Yep. So, all right, he might be out. There's a video of Fields on a cart holding his shoulder 2 minutes after the game ends. Basically, numbers haven't even opened yet, really, on the Jets game for the next week. The Jets are terrible. They might bench Zach Wilson. Is that a net positive? Like which is kind of facetious, but like
Sam Darnold's like, also coming back,
right? Now. The Panthers might use the rest of the season as an exhibition process to audition quarterbacks.
Oh, they pretty much are doing that. Like,
right.
I wouldn't even say
exactly.
Mike. Like, they're starting Sam Darnold.
Micah Parsons gets hurt at the end of the third quarter in the Cowboys game and like came back in, which I actually kind of missed that he came back in for a couple snaps. I had somebody point that out to me. But like most impactful defensive player in the league got hurt, kind of, and they're on a short week the next week. Just these are things you would just be writing down. Like who cares about like making a number in that situation? Just have some frame of reference for what it's probably supposed to be. And if it opened, like the Jets opened 3.5 when we knew we had the Fields video, like that it probably, maybe it's supposed to be 3.5. I don't know. Didn't seem like it was supposed to be 3.5. Yep. If Trevor Siemian's going to play in the game.
You know what else is funny is the people who like really hawk the injury news early, they'll sometimes be looking for the wrong things and betting the wrong things. So you also got to know what to bet on, right? So Ken mentioned quarterbacks. Quarterbacks are valuable to the spread, most valuable by a lot, right? But then you have the whole narrative of like bet the Cowboys they're going to sign Odell Beckham.
Right.
What is that going to do? Like, he probably isn't even going to play the first week. If he does play, he's playing minimal snaps. Even if he was fully healthy and playing in the system, he's not really going to do much for the spread. So really it's, knowing the sport, but also then learning over the years, as Ken has, what is actually valuable to the line. Studying that. Like, okay, these guys just traded for this wide receiver, Chase Claypool. Now they're like, oh, Fields has an extra weapon.
Right.
It doesn't.
The
That's
X's
nothing.
and O's analysis.
What is
which
that?
I just like, I'm like, you guys can have all that stuff. Like, I don't know shit about that stuff, honestly. And I don't really think I have to.
Like that, Chase Claypool is not going to turn the Bears offense into the Chiefs offense, right? And he wasn't even really that good on Pittsburgh.
Right.
So I think things like that, people need to learn really to just over the years of learning and being like, okay, I've seen this before. It didn't really impact the spread. Doesn't really make a difference. Out. And then you might see things with a quarterback where like, okay, this QB's in or out. That just moved it 3-4 points through a key number, stuff like that. So
it's a lot easier to do with daily sports, I find, because if you're just a recreational, right? Tell my friends about this all the time. They're like, what is this goal? What's the downgrade in net? What do you make the downgrade in net? It's like, okay, just quickly go look at previous games where this goalie was the starter and how the market reacted when he was announced as the starter. You have line history for every single game.
Right.
And
if
like
you're a 6% goalie, right, like an 8%.
Same with NBA, right? Like, what the players are worth based off of how the market reacts to them being out. So it's really not that hard. Just put together a list, and this is a roughly the percentage that this guy is worth, or if he's meaningless, right? Like some of my friends will run out to bet every single game where the backup goalie is starting. They want to bet against that team. It's like, well, it's actually not a downgrade. It's just like an even thing, Or
like, are they really the only people that know that?
Right.
Would be the other question.
I'm going to give a square take here. You guys let me know what you think. It's probably my squarest take I'll ever get.
Sure.
All right.
I appreciate the choir. Let me hear the square take. Yeah.
So people say, and trust me, I only bet based on market. I don't like for full games. I don't go and be like, yeah, I think this team's good, so I'm going to bet.
You're not betting your opinion.
I don't bet my opinion on full games. Yep. On props a little different, but on full games, I don't do that. Okay. And I focus a lot on player-based stuff, right? So what is crazy to me is I'll give an example of like the Chiefs-Chargers game that just happened. Sure. It's recent, Sunday Night Football. So like Mike Williams is a receiver on the Chargers. Mm-hmm. He's a good receiver. He's not a great receiver. He's got a starting job on every team. He's pretty good, okay? They would rather have him in the lineup than not have him in the lineup, okay? Mike Williams returns to the game. He was out for a couple weeks, high ankle sprain. They're like, yeah, he's fully healthy. He did get injured in the game, but he claimed pregame he was actually 200%, not 100%.
Well, so what happened? He was actually too ready.
Yeah, he was too ready. So he says, I'm back, I'm ready, I'm in. Okay, the Chargers had Keenan Allen, who was already kind of not healthy. That's their number one or maybe number two receiver. But Mike Williams comes back. There's no impact to the spread on that. And I know personally, just from experience, that a wide receiver doesn't impact the spread. It's not going to make a difference. So Williams is back, no impact to the spread. But Mike Williams is still valuable to the team because if he was not healthy, they'd have to play a backup. And the fact that he's healthy, they bump a guy down. So how can there be zero impact to this when a player is being ruled in or out? I know it's probably just not enough for a full like half point move or a full juice move, but like Mike Williams is good. How is he not moving the line at all? It's a square take. What do you guys think?
I think you're right. It depends on the. I'll actually let Ken speak to this, but I think there was
Rob. Can I ask you a question to tee up on an answer? Do you think there are actually no wide receivers that are spread impact players?
No, I think. Sorry, I think there are plenty that are spread impact players.
Devontae Adams,
yes.
Tyreek Hill,
yes.
Cooper
Kupp, yeah. There are. I think there are receivers that are spread impact players, but on top of that, like a situation where you are basically going from Josh Palmer as your number one receiver to your number three, there's absolutely 100% an impact. In fact, I think receivers might be the more underrated unit in the league in terms of
right now in today's game, for sure.
In today's game, relative to like point spread worth. So yeah, I don't think that's a square take. I mean, listen, everyone's going to evaluate things differently, right? Like I know of groups that purely play news over the course of an NFL week, right? And they basically have a list of like, this is what we think the player is worth. It's not sophisticated, right? It's like half point. Okay, what is that half point? 7 to 7.5 is different than 17 to 7.5. But I've seen people operate in this capacity. full list of players. This is what they're worth. They hire a news guy. News guy comes back and says, this guy's going to be out this week. Boom, they go and fire because they think he's worth half a point or he's worth 1 point.
For which sport?
Every sport.
You're just talking every sport.
But like NFL in particular, right?
But like midweek NFL line moves are basically like who's going to be on the injury report.
Yeah.
Can you figure that out before the injury report comes out?
But my list is not going to match someone else's list. That's not going to match someone else's list. We're going to have discrepancies everywhere. And it depends on where we bet as well, right? Like a lot of us are going to try to get down on that quietly and hope that that number sticks around. And like the sports books don't get access to the information essentially, right?
So Vegas doesn't know.
So they don't know because then they're going to know next time too.
And they're going to know.
They're gonna, like, and
they're going to rig the game. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the meetings might be happening right now as we do this interview.
The cabal, hanging out at
the Thanksgiving.
Where do you
Day,
think they meet? Do they meet at like Caesar's because it's like the palate, like that's like the emperor? Basically, is that where they should?
I think they just do it
desert somewhere.
I think they just do it on. Ever since COVID, they just do it on Skype now. I think.
Really,
it's
easily
like
hackable. Maybe that's how people know Vegas knows. They're getting access to the stream.
Maybe it's out there now. The NFL has probably built their own proprietary web streaming service where they can all just get on, and it's very secure. Sure. And then I wonder how meticulously they plan these games as well. Like, do they just say we need this to be the final score, or do they say we need it to be so chaotic here that DJ Moore is going to score and then he's going to take off his helmet so that there's a 15-yard penalty, and then we're going to miss the kick? Like, does it get that sophisticated when they're planning the outcomes of the games, do you think?
Why did they have Mariota rush so late in the game? You are just spite me.
Johnny is so tunnel vision on these props that this is really, we got to get you some winners.
Well, they probably what happened was they had a list of the handle on the props, right?
We got to get these whatever. But what's going to snap you out of this stuff?
I have plenty of winners, and it's honestly all good. I don't actually typically complain about bets too often or anything like that.
We did bad beats for like 20 minutes.
I really don't complain about bets like I'm referencing years ago. It's just sometimes they'll stick with you, and it's always the ones that stick with you for me specifically is like when I'm already having a bad day and then that kicks on top. If I'm already up and then I'm like, oh, I lost this one, I'm still up on the day.
Yeah. It's like, my dog is sick, and then Mariota went under. Like, oh man, that was it.
Yeah, it is what it is. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Can I ask Rob a question real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
Rob said something that you're trying to bet in the middle of the week, but you're trying not to like move the screen, basically, right? Because then limits are going to go up. You can get more down. When you hear Nick and I talk, and it's not that Nick and I are like the end all be all of like Sunday night, Monday morning NFL betting, but I think we're like starting to become representative of people who are doing that. Do you hate us? Like, I think some people hate us that we do this. Why don't you just wait? You can bet way more. Like, what? Like, be more sophisticated. Like, and at the same time, being like, oh, you think you're so smart betting early, like all that stuff. Like, how do you feel about like us, like what we do?
It would be very hypocritical if I said that I hated you guys because I was you.
Well, hate's a strong word.
And but like it's going to happen regardless. So this is my whole thing, right? Whether it's you and Nick doing it or someone else or Adam Chernoff doing Telegram plays or what else, like there's going to be people that affect the early market regardless. And it's just the nature of sports betting. Like, I remember when I was first betting baseball successfully, I was betting baseball overnights, right? And I used to get people message me all the time, and they're like, "Why don't you wait? Like, why don't you wait till tomorrow morning? You can get more money down tomorrow
college
morning."
Basketball totals,
and it's
the same.
It's like, well, these numbers aren't going to be there tomorrow morning if I wait, and I'm not betting enough where I need to wait. So, to each their own. This is just the way a market works, right? I mean, it's the way that the market works, and you just like adapt or die is what I say. It honestly does.
I also just say, like, I'm not even that smart. Like, if you can't beat me, like, are you serious? Like, I'm not even smart. Like, or just like, you can't beat me. Like, I'm the thing that's preventing you from getting the liquidity. And really, it's like what I represent, right? Which is like how it's happening earlier and earlier and earlier. And professional bettors are getting angrier and angrier and angrier that, like there was a discussion because, what was it? Somebody was going to open, there was a tweet that came out from a sports book that they were going to open college basketball sides. It was like Circa was going to open them like at a certain time. There was something about the timing of the release of sides for college basketball. And it was like, oh, now everyone's going to go bet like $500 at Circa and move the screen and we won't be able to bet more. Which I am like, I was going to say sympathetic. I'm not fucking sympathetic at all, but I am cognizant of that for those people. And like, boy, that sucks. And also I'm doing this. So like, what's the line in what is it, American Gangster, the Denzel line, like he meets with the mob, right? The Italian guy.
Yep.
And he's like, what about the dairy farmers? Are you thinking about us?
Yep.
Referring to like the other people who deal drugs. And he's like, I'm thinking about them about as much as they've ever thought about me. That's like basically like what his answer is. And this is, I have no frame of, like, I have never lived anything that has happened in that movie. I'm only bringing up the quote. I have no, there's no correlation there necessarily, but like, I would say that kind of applies in this situation too.
So I do a show live at 10:30 Eastern time on Sunday nights called Forward Progress, where I guess what the lines will open at and where they will move over the course of the week. Obviously the lines have already opened by that point. I honestly do not look at
the new cousin Sal.
I don't.
You're the new Bill Simmons.
Well, listen, it's a very it's a formula that's worked in the past.
It's also
before.
a low bar to clear.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm pretty in tune with the NFL market, so I have a general idea of where things will move. I think there's value in doing that on a Sunday night. Someone wakes up on Monday morning, they're driving to work, they can listen to that, they get some actionable info. But for me, I don't even look at the actual spreads of the games till Tuesdays, right? So when I have a larger market to bet into, and then it's going to be even bigger on Wednesdays. Wednesdays, I have no problem getting down whatever I want to get down on a game. But like, it doesn't really impact me all that much because I'm not really aware of what the early moves were. You know.
Also, we don't have to be right. Like I'm wrong all the time. Like, not even wrong in terms of where the market goes. Like wrong, just like end up like the bet was, it got closing line value. It was not valuable. They lost the game. Now I know that is not necessarily the measurement of a valuable bet.
Right.
Like beats the close, but like you could have a conflicting opinion. Or like, and if it moves on Monday, is that really that smart? Like, how smart can it be if it moves on Monday? And if it moves on Monday without like news attached to it, it's just like an organic like line move precipitated by somebody with influence gives out the play, which isn't us. Like, we're not doing that. And they could be for a number of reasons.
The thing is, though, I think a lot of people, and this is not to diminish what you do in any way, I think a lot of people can beat the NFL betting on Mondays. People don't do this.
I just said that. I was like, we're not even that. Like, we are not sophisticated,
but like
this is literally like Stafford Fields gets hurt.
Exactly.
Jets open 3.5.
Yes.
Like, ta-da.
Yes.
Got it. Yeah.
Agree. I think there's so many people that can do that. They just choose not to because they think that they're Billy Walters and they can bet on Sunday morning and have the same success, or they don't know how markets work, or so on and so forth. But no, I honestly don't care. I mean, anyone would be frustrated, though, I can see, if they like a certain side in a game.
Yeah.
And now instead of getting -3, you're getting -3.5, and you're like, oh, like this killed a bet for me. Would have been a big bet. I'm still going to bet it,
and then lose by the hook.
And then lose by the.
Right.
But like,
I can Alan Boston and go on a 20 Twitter rant about it, or 20 tweet rant.
I understand the source of frustration, right? But it's that's just the nature of how markets work, right? A sports book is going to open up lines at small limits. They're going to let people bet into it. Every single person that's betting into that number at Pinnacle, for example, who opens up pretty early with small limits, they're going to know that whether that person is sharp or square or whatever, and they're going to get enough bets to say, shape the line. We're going to move it one way. We're going to move it the other. We're going to keep it the same. And then they're going to increase their limits. And this is a process that's going to continuously happen. And eventually you're going to get to the sharks that are in the water at some point when limits are 50K, 100K, or whatever. But there are enough people that are sharp enough to consistently beat the smaller ones and move the line in the right direction, even though they're not the best NFL bettors in the world. So that's why it can be frustrating for someone who's betting at scale. But it's just like you deal with all sorts of problems, and you have to problem solve when you're betting on sports.
If you bet on Monday, it's a quick little life hack for all the bettors out there. If you bet on Monday,
Johnny life hack.
If you bet on Monday, you get 2 sweats. You get the line move sweat up until the day of the game, and then you get the game sweat. So it's 2 for 1 bang for your buck. I would
like
always
injury sweat.
Exactly.
This guy's hurt.
Exactly.
Oh no.
Exactly. You can follow your bet instead of just following your bet for 3 hours. You get to follow for the whole week.
It's exactly like taking your double down face down. You get the double sweat, right?
In blackjack.
But over the course of, a million times longer period of time, basically.
It's even better. Every day you're waking up with a sweat. You're following Adam Schefter's account, notifications. Right. Every time you see that Schefter tweet, you're like, oh, did this hurt me or help me? It's pretty crazy like that. I do appreciate your time today, Ken. You've been generous with it. We might have to do a part 2 of this. We focused a lot on the content side.
We did have Nick on. I was just remembering right now.
Super Bowl.
Yeah, Nick has been on before.
Yeah,
before
we've on.
Okay. You want to do one more? You want to do one more topic? What is an area that we have done like none on? Process?
I would say if you want to give out like a betting edge type mentality thing, like, hey, this is how I thought of this edge. It doesn't have to be something you're currently working, but even in the past, I think that would be a good learning and good to pick your brain on.
The first thing I ever built that won, and then I knew won, it's like the smallest, shittiest market. So I built, I tried to build a couple things like projections, like for all kinds of different stuff. I tried a bunch of stuff. The first thing I ever tried to beat was here's like, you can tell, the story is true because it's incredibly embarrassing. The first thing I tried to beat was baseball first 5 innings markets.
Yep.
I mean, how inefficient could you have? These things are so broken. You just print money betting into this stuff. So this was like 5 years ago, and I built something, and I actually tweeted. I should go back and find it. It's like I built this first 5 projections. I think the Dodgers market is like 17% off. I think I even tweeted that, and like Jeff Ma, who co-hosts Bet the Process,
yeah,
and like followed me for like a long time. Seems like a nice guy, whatever. Which I think he like replied. He was like, "Why do you think that is?" And I didn't even respond. And in my head, there was just something that was just like, "Maybe you're a fucking idiot. Maybe don't do that anymore." And so I had no idea what I was doing. The first thing I built that worked was, and I don't know if they still offer this. Bovada used to. Well, that's a great first step to the sentence. Bovada used to offer hockey shots on goal props for individual players. Maybe they still do. And I think there's a couple apps that offer that same market. And I like kind of knew like how to approach the problem because I like worked on a bunch of stuff previously. I was like, let me just try this. I don't watch hockey. You watch all the hockey. I watch none of it. I had to even look up like, how is a shot? Like, is a shot on goal? Definitely. Like, how is it? This sounds stupid. Like, how is it registered? Obviously it's a shot and it's on goal, but just like how like the statistical part of this works. And so I like built something to price it and had like a 71% ROI for like 7 weeks or something, betting incredibly small amounts of money. Like the max they would take was probably $100. But this was more about solving the problem as opposed to like printing money. It was just like, can I do this? I have to be able to do this. If I can't do this, how the fuck am I going to do anything else? So I did it and I knew it worked and it won. And then I got limited I got limited way later than I thought. I actually made like $6,000 on shots on goal props, betting like $70 on each single. And I remember I was on vacation. My wife's family takes a trip every New Year's. Oh, we went to Sanibel Island in Florida, which has been like wiped off the face of the earth by a hurricane, which sucks. But we used to go there, and I remember like sitting on the back porch of like our hotel like suite or whatever, and I remember getting like the email from them, and I turned to her and I just go like, "Well, it finally happened." Like when does the season start, Rob? Like October 10th or something, whatever.
Mid October, yeah.
And this was like January 6th. That I got the email from them, like, we'd like to lower some of your limits on like some of the, and they were like, we still encourage you to bet all of these other markets or whatever. And I turned to her and I was like, well, honey, it finally happened. Like they finally like paid any attention to like this like dummy betting $70. So
Feel
I just
free to still bet World Cup right before the game.
Like I'm sure there's a way to scale this. Actually, not a lot, but I'm sure there was some way to scale it. And so that was the first one. So Johnny, to your point, that's like the first time where it's like I know I got this. And that's, and I'm sure there are bettors who are listening to this who are like, is that even really a sense of accomplishment that you can beat a hockey shots on goal? But like, try it. And like, if you're a casual bettor, like, see if you can't beat that stuff, honestly, like if you can't beat that stuff, and I'm not saying I can beat every prop market. I definitely can beat very few of them. But that was at least the first time where I was like, okay, like I got it. Like I got it. And I knew everything about the market and I knew like how to price it. And I got it. And that was like a really encouraging thing, honestly, for somebody really early on had nothing to do with the money almost. And actually getting restricted was almost like the biggest like tip of the cap, really, that like, and I guess like Bovada would restrict me just because they were like, this guy's betting a lot of shots on goal props and nothing else. Let's just get him the fuck out of here. But it was just, that was like really encouraging. So that's like a really early one. I'm sure I have the dust is on the spreadsheet somewhere of how to beat that kind of thing, but that would be an example.
It's definitely a feat. Beating any market is good. It doesn't matter how small it is, honestly. Like it's still very challenging because there's other people who will still try to beat that all the way up, right? Sure. Obviously, once you get to playing, bigger amounts, you're not really focusing on like
or just like strikeout props. Johnny, how many people play strike? It doesn't seem like fucking everybody plays strikeout props. It's unbelievable.
So I forget what it was, but I saw a tweet from FanDuel. It was either in their like investor prospectus from last week, or they tweeted something out. But the handle on parlays is bigger than straights now, and a certain
That's
percentage,
true. I know that like almost for a fact.
a very high percentage of parlay bets include at least one player prop, and that was pretty crazy to me because the SGP, same game parlay, for those who know what I'm talking about, is obviously growing, but the amount of people who just jam player props and use that as their fun way to bet the game is growing like exponentially. So it does seem like I don't know about strikeouts because it's like MLB, it's not as fun, but like for NFL, like,
but it's also the only thing going on. Like,
yeah,
it's during a time of the year when there's nothing else. So I just feel like it's probably more in the content space, Johnny, to your point, than the casual bettor. Like the casual bettor is just like not betting baseball to a significant
extent. Exactly.
But the content people are just pushing strikeout props, and home run props this past season were like took off crazy.
Yeah, those are
like
fun.
Every guy with a Discord, every guy with like a whatever, all those, like there's like all those prominent people now in the space doing, I don't even know what they do, honestly, but I know they bet a lot of home run props, and I know some of them hit and a lot of them don't, and then they hype the win.
Most don't. A home run prop is like almost like a gold mine for the actual like enjoyment of it, because you usually get like 4 or 5 at bats a game, and you just have to watch those at bats, and it's usually, depending on the player, a high plus money. If you're betting Aaron Judge, it's not really that much of a payout, but you're probably getting like
except he actually homers. That's he actually hits.
You're getting like plus 400, plus 600. There's obviously there's value in every market, so there's definitely value on guys to hit home runs, especially early in the season when you see like who's playing. Then you might see like, okay, this guy's moved up to the 3 spot in the lineup or the 2 spot.
Have you tried to beat this, Johnny? Have you like tried to beat this market?
Home runs?
It seems like really. It just seems everything seems so artificially low.
I play everything.
It all just seems like all the prices are so, like, what is?
You can get value. It's not easy. Like you're not going to win money just jamming home run props. I'll tell you that for free. Like the hold on the yes is going to be like roughly 35 to 45%. On that, right? And then most books don't offer a no price, which is the reason why they're able to do that. The ones that do offer a no price, it's so jammed that you're never going to find value on the no at like minus 13.
And it's a home run too, right? Like an anytime touchdown scorer. Like how many NFL games? Like what percentage of NFL games have 0 touchdowns in them? Like very
one
few.
This year,
right? Very right. Exactly. Right.
Very few. Very
very famous one where some people had no touchdown. So there's been one. There are a ton of baseball games that have the average number of home runs for a team in a game, like each individual team, is like 1, right? Or like 1.5 or something. It's like a really low number. So you could have a lot of games where there's just nothing, and they just like, think about roulette when they just sweep the board when it's like 0-0 and they just like pull in all the chips basically. It's just even that kind of
some guys just don't homer. Like they don't. There's not. It's very very unlikely that they're going to homer. Like it's like
and there's
a
also guys
season guy.
There's also a lot of the homers. For somebody hits 30 home runs in a year, that doesn't mean they have 30 games where they hit a home run.
Right. Multi-homer
There's a lot of multi-homer
games
as well. But like that is the ultimate recreation. Like think about why a recreational would love that bet. You have multiple sweats over the course of a game, exactly like Johnny said, and it's a lottery ticket type of bet, right? Where it's basically like paying the same amount as a parlay would. So I completely get why people are, especially content creators, people selling picks, are gravitating towards those, because that is a bet that is extremely fun. Like it's one of the most fun bets to choose.
You're going to get dusted on those for sure as a rec better.
It's like golf outrights.
Yes.
You get dusted on golf outrights most of the time, unless you're Rob and you just print money at that stuff.
Well, at one point,
I wouldn't say you'll get dusted on golf outrights, because you could line shop enough in golf outrights, and some of the sharper books don't take that much of a hold, right? When I'm talking home run props,
you go to bookmakers market, and it's like way better than every other.
And then you got like, let's say you have access to Circa, for example, if you're in Colorado or Nevada, and then you have access to Pinnacle, which is an amazing sports book, and low hold on golf outrights, right? And then you have access to, let's say, a few other regulated sites. Let's say now when you put that all together, you're probably only betting into like a 3% hold, which is manageable. You're not going to get demolished. the home run props, because of the lack of there being the ability to bet a no price at anything reasonably fair.
Can you price shop those, Johnny? Like if you
home
price
run
shop
props,
home
no
runs,
doubt. Go if you guys want
like a thing.
Absolutely. On betstamp, we actually built in. It was one of our biggest used features for this summer for baseball. Was the home run price shopping. So we have price shopping for all player props across every regulated sports book.
How much different are home run props?
Big time difference in home run props. So you'll find like occasionally you'll go like, hey, Vladdy Guerrero hit a home run, and one book will have like plus 450, and then the other books they'll be as low as like plus 200, which is a big difference. I'm not saying the plus 450 is good though. That's the thing. It's just a matter of like that plus 450 is still negative EV, but if you're only betting at like one book, I'm not going to mention any book specifically, but you're going to get demolished. If you line shop on home run props, you're still going to lose, but you'll stay alive longer. If you line shop on like golf outrights, you have a shot to win. I'm not saying you're going to win, but you have a shot, to hit an outright, be in good
I just bet the
variance.
favorite every time. Is that good? I just bet like John Rahm every tournament.
If you line shop, honestly, it's not bad. That's what I'm saying. Like you're going to lose. You'll probably end up losing like over the course of a billion sample, like, minus 2.5%, which is manageable. If you do that on home run props, you're losing like 10 to 15% line shopping. No line shopping, you're losing like 40%.
Well, and volume. You've been sweating home run props like 15 games a day. Golf tournament, there's one a week. Well, unless you've been like Euro and stuff like that.
Yeah. Do you guys like the golf tournament sweats?
I love it.
But your guy just like doesn't.
Yeah.
So he has to be in it on Sunday, otherwise you have no fun. So that's the thing.
There's multiple golf sweats, right? There's always the DFS golf sweat, which is to make the cut, because you want your lineup to go 6 for 6, usually in terms of making the cut, or else you're going to get cooked. So the cut sweat is probably the best sweat of any golf, because you'll have a few guys that are right around the cut line every week, and you can follow them around on Friday, and then you want to just like, you probably want to throw up. But I've had a lot of those, but I love golf. You're right in the sense that like the fields are so large, there's going to be tournaments where you have no one in contention and it sucks. And then it's like, guess what? I'm just going to do something else on Sunday.
You're just going to place another bet on Sunday morning.
or it's the summer. It's like, I'm just going to go outside.
Go golfing for real. Go actually for a round of golf.
Right. And have a life.
Yes. But so obviously you strike me, Ken, as someone who is not looking to specialize in one sport, but to kind of take advantage of any market that you possibly can. So I've heard you talk about esports before. I've heard you talk about pretty much everything at some point or another. What is the current craze for you right now? Something that you're kind of obsessed with in terms of finding value on the board?
Awards, probably. And that's not a recent obsession. That's probably like a year to year and a half. I used to bet the Heisman sometimes, and it's the worst. It's kind of like, if you go play a slot machine and you win on your first pull, like you're doomed. I mean, because you're just going to play for the rest of your life, basically. I mean, you just got no shot because you're just going to always remember that.
Or you be like my wife and take your winnings out of the machine and move over to the next machine, because they don't know, that next machine doesn't know that you just won your previous spin, right?
Right.
Exactly. This is...
Wait, that's actually kind of reasonable, though.
Please stop now.
That's kind of reasonable.
Well, that's like Vegas knows. They know that you didn't win.
There's a built-in hold on every machine regardless.
Exactly. So if one just paid out...
Do you think that they're do you think the machines are preconditioned?
Slot machine talk coming up here.
Slot machine talk. Are the slots preconditioned to make you win in the early going?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Well, that would be a crazy program. If you could...
Don't play slots. Everyone listening, don't play slots.
The card goes in.
Yeah.
It's a new customer.
Maybe online. Online on these casinos, like,
well, that's all rigged, right? I mean, that's
who knows.
So my wife's whole thing. My wife, credit to her, she's trying to gain an edge. So I'll give her that. She's trying to think outside the box, but it's go to a machine. If you win in the early going, you cash out. You take that slip. You go to another machine, because she believes that the machines are preconditioned to allow you to win to start, get you like sucked in, hooked in, and then you lose over the long run.
But here's a mistake. She's got to cash that slip for actual cash, then put cash in the machine. You can't put a winning slip in. They'll know you already won.
They would walk her out of it. After 5 slips that
Johnny's
she goes to cash,
figured out.
they'd walk her out of the casino. They'd be like, excuse me, miss. Playing her penny slots, yes.
So wait, what's my current craze that I'm working on? So I really like, anyway, the slot machine example, I bet Lamar Jackson to win the Heisman the year that he won before the season started, and it makes you feel like the biggest super genius of all time. I think I bet 5 players to win the Heisman. He was one. He was 110 to 1. I like made the bet on 5 times. Remember it like it was yesterday. Like remember it cashing. It was awesome. He had like a crazy game against Florida State like week 4, week 5, and I was like, we might actually do this, which is pretty cool. And an obsession with awards kind of began from that moment. I really didn't put a lot of effort in for a time. And then in the last like year or two, just because I feel like some of the tools I have are a little more sophisticated, or even just I intuition, I kind of know a little bit more. I was able to and Rob's gotten like the prototype stuff for some of the hockey awards. I DM Rob, I was like, I don't know anything about hockey. I know absolutely nothing about hockey. And I just try to price this stuff like, hey, I built this. Does this make sense? Like, yes. Or in the case of one thing I sent last night, no, not even close. And so with any award market, they all function so fundamentally differently. And there's like an element of, they're just like kind of silly would be like the right way to put it. They don't, like an award, it's like a voting driven. So you bet on a game, right? You bet on the World Cup that's taking place right now. You're going to get kind of a random outcome. Yep. Like, like which random outcome am I going to get in this game? Am I going to get Germany 5-0 because they had a million scoring chances? Or am I going to get, Japan 2-1 or whatever it was? With an award, there's this bizarre thing that happens where it turns from a game of chance, like a game of probability, into a game of certainty. And there's a moment in every award market where someone is now like going to win, or is just like insanely likely to win. And in some of the award markets, pricing that's really weird. Like, what are you going to go from even to minus 10,000 in like one day? Like, you can't do that. And then so you have the time horizon, like the awards sometimes don't get announced for several months. So if a price is somewhat low, sometimes it'll be, use an example. So like what Mahomes to win MVP. That is not a certainty. That's not what I'm talking about there. But there's probably a concept there where like, if you look at that market, you go, he should probably be more than that. At the same time, do I want to bet minus 150 and win on Valentine's Day? Like, is that at like not even really at not high limits too? Like, is that something that I'm at? So sometimes those favorites like linger there basically because of that, because it's just like, and then as you'll see, and this happened with baseball, as you get really close to the end of the year, everyone that's the favorite goes to like minus 5,000. Like within 3 days, it happened. Verlander, Alcantara. The NL Rookie of the Year was weird. Julio got like taken off the board basically to win AL Rookie of the Year. And it happened late because the time horizon was really small for people to get paid. They're just weird markets. I know there's a couple other people in the space that do a really good job on this stuff. And I just kind of like piqued my interest. And I like watching games a lot. I'm not the person that bets and like doesn't watch. And when I've tried to do that with sports like college basketball, I hate it. I hate that I don't watch, and I hate that I don't know. I just have my numbers and that's it. So awards is fun because you can watch every game every night and just get a feel for kind of what's going on. And every one of them functions completely differently. They're just weird, and in a way that's like kind of appealing. And I, have had some success in the past betting that, and hopefully we'll have a lot of success this time. It depends on how good the feedback Rob sends me on the hockey on the Norris Trophy. We'll see how that goes.
How are do you ever do like the playoff awards? So like guy to win the
I do.
Yeah, those ones at least.
Well, we did most outstanding player of the Final Four. We talked about that at the start of the interview with McCormick and Abaji, right? Which is still, and then maybe the business wasn't that funny, but it was kind of funny. There was some funny business going on, and I will to my death, I will believe that something happened with that award. It makes no sense, but that's what you deal with too, right? You think you got it nailed, and then like voting based award, like and some of these voters, we don't have to go into it, but they're just crazy. Like, oh yeah. My God, right? Yeah. And trying to honestly, part of the process, and this is true with the postseason awards, like you're mentioning, like Conn Smythe and hockey finals MVP in the NBA, which is usually super predictable and like you can't bet it, with rare exceptions. The thing you're also doing is handicapping the voter, right? Like, who cares what I think? And you guys have this with the NFL draft when you bet it, I'm sure. Yep. Where how many people do you see give out bets for the NFL draft because like they see all the mocks have this or something. Here's the average of the mock draft position. And yes, like there are a couple mock drafts, like Daniel Jeremiah is really plugged in. Like there are some people who like know stuff, but like that's not how you beat that. Like the way you beat that is like the actual information. Yes. Like what is the team going to do? Like not who I think they should take, which is like how some people try to solve that. And like, do I know anything about what the team normally does? Do I have any like inside information with the team, sourcing, whatever? Could have it from a variety of angles. Like, how can I know something as opposed to, well, I'm doing my mock and I think the Niners should take a quarterback. So like, I'm going to bet them to take it's like, that has nothing to do with it. So the awards are the same thing. It's like, it's not who I think the NBA most valuable player should be. It's the fact that like there's insane voter fatigue with the award. Normally it usually goes to somebody that fits these criteria. This person is really unlikable, or this person's really likable, or whatever. This person seems to like have captivated the voters because they're having a record-setting season. Aaron Judge would be a really good example, like versus Ohtani, where I'm sure really smart people think Ohtani should have won that award, but like the exercise was not to figure out who the best baseball player was. That was not the exercise.
Right.
The exercise was, who are people going to vote for? And like, at some point in the second half of the season, it became very obvious that voters were going to vote for Aaron Judge because of what he was doing. And it didn't become a certainty, but like it more likely than the market started pricing at a certain point, once it became really clear where the two teams were going. So just like, you're handicapping the voter too, in addition to like thinking about the sport. So anyway, I like awards. I think they're fun.
I think we talked about the NFL MVP and how like, don't bet Aaron Donald to win the MVP for the Super Bowl, because it was like, listen, like, you don't even know how crazy a game he would have to have, and then they would still give it to someone else. And it was almost the perfect storm where he won it.
Yes.
But he still didn't win it. He literally
it's like when Von Miller won. I had Von Miller to win that, and I probably made a terrible bet.
Yeah.
Like, I probably made
I bet him defensive players.
I bet him before the AFC Championship game. Well, I really like the Broncos against the Patriots in the AFC Championship game. And I was trying to think of other ways to bet that outcome other than betting the Broncos to beat the Patriots. Like, okay, I like the Broncos in the game, but like, if they win, what else happens? And so I bet like 4 Broncos defensive players, because Peyton Manning had like a fake neck at that point.
Yeah, got him no touchdown passes in the Super Bowl, I think.
So I was like, all right, I bet like Von Miller, what was like DeMarcus Ware was on that team, right?
Yeah, he was.
Chris Harris. Like, I bet like anybody who I thought could make a splash play in the Super Bowl to win MVP. So like, maybe I made a good bet because they won and he won, but like, is it really smart to spray the board on defensive players to win the Super Bowl MVP? Like, I won, neat.
Always
like,
depends on the
I don't know if I made a good bet there.
Yes. I have one thing that I was interested in getting your opinion on is for NBA, what I've always found, and I don't necessarily play these, nor can you get like insane amounts, but sure. I did have, so for example, when the Raptors won, this was not a good bet that I made, just a fun bet, but when the Raptors won the championship,
in the finals,
when after Kawhi hit the shot versus Philly in the second round,
7, that was very heartbreaking. Philly covered, but I had them to win this series for like a lot of money. But.
So after Kawhi hit that shot, I was like, I gotta bet Raps to win the chip, because like we're in Toronto. Obviously, it's just a homer bet. And it was like, I forget what the odds were, but I remember actually opting and just was like, okay, if the Raps win the championship, there's pretty much zero chance that Kawhi doesn't win the MVP if the Raps win the championship. And Kawhi MVP was being priced like a little bit higher. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going on Kawhi MVP. I'll take the heat, but like, what are the
Steph this year? Steph was the same thing. Warriors to win the series was different than him to win the finals by like a reasonable amount at open, and then that kind of compressed a little bit.
Exactly, but even on the Warriors, it's like, hey, technically, I guess someone else could win it on the Warriors. On that, it's like on that Raps team, like who was going to win it? No one. It's like some teams don't have another guy that could win it, like the Bucks. Like, who's going to win it on the Bucks? Giannis,
right?
Like, who's going to win the MVP? So I was wondering, do you ever find edges on that, like just taking the player versus the team?
Sure. Well, I think the fun thing, this goes back to what I was saying before, all of them are different, right? So NBA Finals MVP is, with basically 2 exceptions in the last 50 years, an incredibly predictable award, right? And I guess it's like, well, if it happened 2 out of 50, then it's not predictable. But like, yeah, Andre Iguodala is going to win sometimes. Like, yeah, that's going to happen. And like, the Pistons are going to win the title without like a reasonable candidate for Finals MVP. That's going to happen sometimes. Like, sure, okay. But every other time, it's like the best player, or like Tony Parker won one time, I think, with the Spurs, right? But like most of the time, sure, like it's almost a 1-to-1 correlation with like the best player on the team and the team. And you'll see this in the middle of a series, like somebody will have a really good game 1, but the best player won't have a great game 1, and it'll kind of like send things in a weird direction. And maybe that's an entry point to make a bet, because you kind of know, look, when they end up winning, Like it's more likely than not that the best player is going to win. So in the NBA, it can be pretty predictable like that. But let's use another one that's really unpredictable. What about World Series MVP? We have seen crazy stuff happen before. And it's like almost entirely driven by the performance in the series. And baseball is a really random ass sport. So like weird stuff is going to happen all the time. Conn Smythe has a little bit of that.
It does.
In hockey for sure, which Rob definitely knows about. Hot goalie on a losing team has won before. Jaguar, like that's really crazy.
I don't think that'll happen anymore.
It would be
seems unlikely.
Yes,
seems unlikely, right? It's like NBA Finals MVP going to a Jerry West is the last guy who lost the finals, which is funny because he's in the HBO show and everything, which is like focuses on that. But that's the cool part is MVP in the NBA, MVP in the NFL. Like all of these are so fundamentally different. Voter fatigue, like who votes for the award can be different. Rob, I didn't know this. I'm sure you do. Which one? There's the Vezina. The general managers vote for the Vezina, which is like crazy. Like you don't have that in any other sport. So like, are they more likely to favor something? Are they more locked into analytics and like how goalies perform than like this guy has a lot of wins, something like that, or has a high goals against average? Like that's all things that make each individual one different.
Yes, and now like look at the voter changes for the NFL as well for MVP this year. I mean, a guy like Tua, for example, or anyone else that you might consider maybe a Jalen Hurts, outside of let's say Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes. I think that, by the way,
what are the changes?
They now have
it's
a top
ranked
5.
choice voting.
Ranked choice.
So it's all the voters used to only give a first place vote.
Yes.
And that's it. Like I vote for Aaron Rodgers, and they don't have anything else they get to write in there. And now they get to rank them 1 to 5, and it's a
like
point
NHL.
system.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. When NBA does voting the same way, they have like total points and then first place votes. And then but the important thing is that's not just most valuable player. That's all the awards, but all of the other awards, it's just a top 3, but it's still a top 3. So if you have
comeback player of the year, like all that stuff is okay.
Defensive rookie. So like if you were going to try to take a flyer on somebody to beat Sauce, the consensus opinion is he's the best. So like it's when that's a consensus opinion, it's tougher to like break that basically, because if people aren't voting him first, they're voting him second. Like they just are. Whereas Tua is a really polarizing player because there will be people that will not vote for him because he missed games.
Exactly.
So like I'm not voting for someone that missed 2 games or 3 games. Or
so it's less variance technically.
Right. I think it favors the top heavy guys.
Of course. Yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Because like, how can you rank Mahomes 6th and not rank him?
How can you
first or second, no matter what?
Yeah. So here's I can understand why it happened. It's because the NFL is very different from gambling organizations or sports betting organizations. But the fact that you could have a voting change like mid-season when they have been accepting wagers on this since the beginning of the season is not right. Like there needs to be some sort of coming together of the minds here and saying
it's early, Rob.
Hey
early
guys, let's wait till the off season to do this, because there's so many people who actually placed, in my opinion, good bets on Tua at one time or another. Okay. Depending on the price, obviously.
Well, those bets have aged really well. I mean, I don't think he's going to win.
Right.
He can still win. Like what if they just don't lose? Then he probably wins.
Who's offensive rookie of the year?
Offensive rookie of the year is Kenneth Walker or Dameon Pierce, probably.
So, wow. Who else is in contention that's a quarterback?
I mean, nobody.
No one.
Pick it, but he won't win. Yeah.
I mean, he could. Like, I remember last year, a friend.
Can he win, Rob? Can he really win?
But Dameon Pierce also can't win then.
He can win.
I'm taking a look at this. No, Dameon Pierce.
No. Yeah, Dameon Pierce can win.
Why can't Dameon Pierce win, Johnny?
No wins on the team, man.
So you think it's like a team aspect?
If Kenneth Walker makes the playoffs, then how are they going to not give it to
That's
him?
an important aspect to every award, obviously, which you've had at. One is like handicapping the voters. There are some awards that are incredibly correlated to team success. NFL Most Valuable Player would be one. NBA Sixth Man of the Year is another. Nobody's ever won Sixth Man of the Year winning less than like 57% of their games or something. Like something outrageous.
I might flyer on Kenny Pickett. I might flyer
offensive
Kenny
rookie
Pickett.
of the year. Offensive rookie of the year doesn't work like that because there are a lot of, and just think about it intuitively, there's a lot of quarterbacks that get taken in the top 10. Okay, why are they taken in the top 10? Because the team's garbage. So the team's going to be garbage for a year and they're not going to be very good. And they win the award going like 3-13.
But the guy that ends up having a good year, like wins wise of those QBs, is the one who wins it. That's what usually happens. Like Mac Jones.
Unless there's like a big statistical difference.
Of course, unless there's like a massive difference. But for the most
part, it's a tiebreaker. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, this year is weird because like there wasn't actually like it wasn't a QB year.
No,
Right.
because there was Chris Olave was the favorite earlier on in the year, and then he
Drake
got
London.
concussed.
Drake London off
Wilson.
the list.
There's a lot of
Pickens.
Christian
Remember when
Watson
Pickens became like
George
4-1?
George Pickens.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at it now. Just we got Kenny Walker minus 140 odds via a sports book. Can't be named.
consensus
odds.
odds minus
Consensus
140.
You know what? I'll do them the Jeopardy.
As seen on
I'm gonna
CNN
check Pinnacle,
and the Wall Street Journal.
proud sponsor of the show, Pinnacle. Here,
Yeah.
we're gonna go with Pinnacle for these. We'll see if they have them up. I really hope they do. If not, I'm sure they'll be putting them up at some point in the season. We can notify you guys. But okay, Ken Walker, then Chris Olave plus 300, Damian Pierce 400. I'm gonna say that. I don't want that pick.
That's at Pinnacle, so they're different than the rest of market, and they have Pierce and Olave reversed.
Wait,
Yep.
Are you on Pinnacle right now?
You're
No,
No,
but just
I'm-
in general, I feel like those two have been. I haven't checked. Like I've been in DC, so I don't know what offensive rookie was this week when it opened. But typically, it's been like Walker and Pierce.
Yeah,
like 1-2.
Olave
basically everywhere.
leapfrog Pierce this week, I guess.
Okay.
Pierce did have a poor week. Christian Watson 1,600, George Pickens 28, Pacheco 3,300, Kenny Pickett 33, Garrett Wilson 4,000. I'm gonna line shop and see if I can pick up a Kenny Pickett.
You will have
price.
success, by the way. Line shopping awards. You will probably have some success.
Yeah, I actually like that. A listener of this show, I won't mention his name because he wouldn't want me to mention his name, but he sent me a ticket every single week of last year of him just doubling down on Davis Mills because he's a quarterback and he's starting. Who knows what's going to happen? And Davis Mills did go on like a 3 or 4 game stretch last year where it was just like, okay, this is now
tricked all of us. Tricked all of us into thinking he was good.
Yeah, and giving him another season to start.
Davis Mills.
Right.
Giving him another season to start. But yeah, the awards markets are fascinating because, like, listen, this isn't the first time you've heard this, Ken, before, but I personally have like a fundamental problem with betting something that's not going to get resolved for like 4, 5, 6 months, sometimes longer than that. I think it's challenging, but
As you
sometimes I see some numbers when I look at an awards market that are so far off. No one's gonna know what I'm talking about, but
Are we allowed to see one? Are we allowed to talk about one right now?
Well, Linus Olmark,
Like,
Bruins.
what's your Linus Olmark position to win the Vezina?
Yeah, it's pretty
bigger than mine, and I got a lot. so,
No, you probably have a bigger position because I just bet it one time and didn't like consistently double.
When I have to get a team of people involved, that usually means it's like, for me, it's pretty good.
Yes.
And that's true with everybody. I was talking to somebody else who bets awards a ton. That's the other thing. The weird, like, dark corner of gambling that is like the people who are obsessed with awards. There's like, I don't know how many people do this, but there are like a very small, and I'm now in that like network of talking to a few of them. We are a crazy bunch of people. Like we're out there because this is all we talk about. I had an hour-long conversation with somebody about the Calder Trophy 2 nights ago. I mean, I just like, this is what we do. And it's like, for you, Rob, of course, like you're able to, but I think this is an important distinction. Like, you're really good at what you do, Rob, right? Like, you bet a lot of money, you win. I was talking to somebody who helps me sometimes with liquidity, and I was like asking him about some of the sports that he like farms out to people, like gets numbers for college basketball, whatever. I was like, how's the season going? And he goes, oh, like most of this stuff just prints money. Like, we're just like putting in bets and putting in. The toughest time is obviously getting paid out, not getting stiffed and whatever. And like, cool, awesome for all you guys. That's so great. But like, I can't do that. And I think a lot of the people that listen to gambling content sometimes get like fed the idea, don't bet the season long stuff. It ties up your money for a really long time. And like, cool, that is a pretty good piece of advice if you're printing, like the guy that I talked to, where it's like, well, yeah, we want to use that money and like obviously
roll it over,
over more bets. But like the casual bettor, like that's a terrible piece of advice. Like that's so what, go beat NFL sides instead? Like that's the counter advice to, I mean, just what? So it's just, sometimes I think there's a distinction there where like the pro can be really like not condescending, but like sort of just like against the idea of tying up money for a long time, which I totally understand. But like, if that's the thing that you win at, and this could be true for win totals, if people specialize in win totals, especially college football, you get paid in 13 weeks. Like, it's a really fast turnaround to get paid. You put the bets in the first week of September, you paid by Thanksgiving. And it's like really not that bad. Like if my advice to people would more be, if that's what you're good at, then do that. Like if that's what you win at, and I don't care what the time around. I mean, I wouldn't bet the like bet online will aliens make contact with Earth in 2035 stuff or whatever. Like maybe let's steer clear of those things.
Right.
But some or like even like you really want to bet DeSantis even money to be the Republican nominee the elections in 2 years? Like, are we really doing that? And the answer is like, well, I do have a little bit of DeSantis to be the Republican nominee, but like maybe not that. But if we're talking about a win total or some kind of future market, doesn't have to be like to win the title, but something like that. If you win at that and you could price that really well, and that's your thing, or that interests you and other stuff does not interest you because it'll hold your interest, you'll be better at it, you'll work harder on it, then that's my advice. Like go work on that stuff or whatever it doesn't have to be futures, it could be something else. Could be Johnny's Mariota rushing props or whatever, which most people are probably like snoring over thinking about.
Well, you bring up a good point because like obviously every type of bettor is going to be different. People are the common criticism I get on Monday. Like if I were to criticize somebody that was playing overnight, so for example, or releasing picks on Monday, they'd be like, you're a pro, you have access to all sorts of liquidity. Like you should have no issue getting down on Monday. I don't. Like if I wanted to, I can fill a pretty big bet on a Monday. The problem is I'm going to go to my partners and say, hey, I think this number is going to move in the NFL. And they're going to say, guess what? We have 1 million college basketball games today. We have a bunch of NBA. We have a bunch of NHL. That's probably the exact same edge as this NFL game. Why am I going to put this in my account that's going to settle on Sunday? Let's wait until later in the week because we can use this credit elsewhere. And that's ultimately what it comes down to for people who don't understand the nuance of the conversation. But for a casual bettor who's not risking all of their credit every single day, or just wants to get the great thing about a futures bet or awards bet or whatever is it's actually a season-long sweat, right? You get a sweat from every single game.
Hopefully it's a season-long sweat.
Well, hopefully, right? but like, Ken's messaging me the other night of like, thank like Sorokin had a horrible game. Beautiful. Great for our, and
I believe I DM'd you and I just said like, I think multiple times I've said like, I need him to like fall off a building or something. Right. Like I need something bad. Like, I don't actually want something bad to happen to Ilya Sorokin, but like it would be to my advantage if he were to miss some games. That would be really good.
Yeah, or at least if there's more of a goalie share there, like the backup starts to get some more starts. That way he doesn't have to get hurt.
Had a great start the other night.
Yeah,
make that happen.
Yeah, let's let Varlamov catch a heater and he can play 3 or 4 games in a row. Time. But it is a sweat not only is it a sweat for the bet that you've made, Ullmark to win the Vezina. So now you're cheering for him. You're actually cheering against all the other goalies that are in competition with him. Potentially you picked up some other positions on, other people you thought are valuable or whatever, but
yeah, maybe it's just hypothesis. Maybe it's Connor Hellebuck. Maybe that's who you end up betting his position on. Maybe that's.
I got to get your opinion on this market. So I was just line shopping, trying to find Kenny Pickett. Found plus 4,000. Might have to fire on that.
Into this.
I got to look.
The hockey wasn't doing it for you, Johnny. You had to go work on something else while we were talking.
No. I wanted to further the convo on the futures because it's funny to get. It's great to get Ken. He's really good at this, anyways. But okay, here's one we got to discuss if we have time. Right. Comeback Player of the Year. Because
in the NFL?
Yeah. Because what is the award like? What do you actually pick? So like obviously the 1 year Alex Smith won most notably just for playing a game, right?
Eric Berry.
Awesome. Yeah, and those ones are great, right? This year, I'm looking at the favorites. Okay. Second favorite, Saquon Barkley. Dude, how is that a comeback player of the year? He played last year. Derrick Henry. He literally played. He came back for the playoffs. Game.
Yep.
Like what? How could he be the third favorite?
Johnny's been listening to the show. We did that rant in the offseason about Derrick Henry. Yeah. That was,
so what was that actually? Already. Did you actually bet him for a comeback player of the year?
God no. He was the worst bet on the board. He was the favorite before the year, by the way.
Like how?
But it's like the rant was how.
So
did
Geno
he qualify?
Geno Smith's currently the favorite. I'd say that's fair.
I think Ken really needs Geno Smith.
Do you have Geno Smith?
Yeah, Johnny, you don't know what the positions are. This is like my largest position on any.
Well, what do you have?
Right? Well, actually, Omar from a winning like a profit standpoint is the biggest. But like we were also betting like 90 and 80 and 70, and now it's 3 or whatever.
What do you have on Geno Smith?
I have a lot of 40 and 25 and 20. Basically, comeback player of the year is really funny because the winner of the award may not be listed before the season starts. Happens all the time.
Of course.
Or if they're listed, they're like way deep and like nobody even knows if they're listed or not. And then like a narrative will develop about a player, and sportsbooks will either get requested to list the player or will choose organically to list the player because their competitor is listing the whatever. And this happened with Geno, where like I think he was like deep on a couple places, but he kind of got just like put in there. Like I think it was week 4 maybe or something. And he got put in at like 40 in one place. And then a bunch of places it was 20 or 25. And it's actually a funny moment when you see a guy get added, because it's almost like, well, if you're going to add him, then there has to be some impetus to add him.
Yes.
Like he must be doing really well and more likely to win. So like maybe like should be shorter, because you're like, if you felt the need to add him, how can he be 40 if you felt the need to add him? The guys who are 40 who can't win.
Fair enough.
I would like him, but that's a perfect example, Johnny, of just like an award that's different than every, and there are
Travis
in the NBA,
Etienne
most improved
classified.
player.
He technically
like
didn't come back.
Did Travis Etienne?
Right.
Is Travis Etienne like,
Yeah,
how was he eligible?
So
he
here's
didn't
the other
come,
thing.
he never played.
You're looking at the market and being like, how can this be so inefficiently or like poorly priced? Like that's like, you're looking at these guys being like, these guys can't win. Like you're right. So then maybe it creates a valuable betting opportunity.
Sure. No,
like
I mean,
Derrick
like,
Henry was the favorite. Right.
See,
Yeah,
I just
exactly.
don't know, like, because Saquon Barkley right now, I'm looking at pricing. Geno Smith, rough range, minus 150. Saquon, rough range, plus 120.
It's like it's
right?
basically
so
like a
two-horse
60-40
race.
or a 55-45
So-
Geno Saquon in most places.
Yeah, so here's what I'm saying. Like, who's rating? If it's rated, if it's going to be graded on, like, a guy actually coming back from the dead, basically, Geno Smith, then it should be Geno
Yeah.
Smith. He's playing and he's starting and he's thriving. Saquon Barkley, like, yes, he got injured, but, like,
Yeah, dealt with injuries, had a bad season. Like that's Geno. I mean, Geno had like Saquon and Geno are the same. Geno was just over the period of like he was bad for a long time.
Yeah,
and Saquon was not himself for a shorter period of time.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to say this like I believe these narratives. This would go back to the handicapping the voter kind of a thing.
That's what
we
gotta figure out. We gotta
Quarter
figure it
poll
out.
awards, mid-season awards. Like Athletic does a Heisman straw poll now every week, so you can kind of like get a little bit of a feel for. Okay, I think these people are full of shit, and I don't agree with this. But who cares? Like, what are they going to do? What are they going to write on the sheet of paper? So, to your point, like this would be a good award where don't bet what you think. Like, who cares what you think? Like, what are they talking about?
Right.
And this is a perfect award for that.
Agreed. Listen, as a Canadian myself, we're known to be a little bit nicer type of guys. I would never vote for a Saquon Barkley over a Brian Robinson, personally. Like you're talking about a dude that got shot this year,
right?
A couple times. And it doesn't matter what he does. If he's a starting running back that like contributes somewhat to the team's success, I'm more likely to vote for Brian Robinson than a Derrick Henry who played last year, like literally played.
And you know about Robinson, right? Do you know like the tag to this? He's ineligible to win.
Oh, I didn't actually even know
so
that.
The like guy who decides the AP criteria tweeted like week 2 or something. It was either before the year or right at the start. Like we've gotten a lot of imagine writing this tweet like we've gotten a lot of messages about whether Brian Robinson could win comeback. Gee, from who? Like who do you think's sending these messages about whether he can win comeback player of the year? a player in his rookie season, a player, and I'm sure it was like Commanders fan 22. It's like, oh, can he win? Like I'm just a big old football fan here. Just really want to know if he can. And he can't. A rookie can't win the award. It's not possible.
Got it.
Just
okay.
And the criteria that they use to, and that's why Etienne's a terrible bet too. Like he hadn't played games yet.
Yes.
Like coming back from what? Clemson? Like what? It just doesn't like make any sense.
How about though?
Give me I'm gonna make some picks here. I want to make some.
1 second before I do.
Sorry.
Do you know who Nick Gates
I have
is?
like 4 minutes left, by the way. Just
okay.
to give you guys a heads up.
Nick
I have like
Gates?
4 minutes.
Yes. Do you know who Nick Gates is?
No.
Yeah.
I see him on the list. I don't know who it is.
He's somebody that I had to bet to win comeback player of the year to cover Geno in case something stupid happened. So
Nick Gates is a backup offensive lineman for the Giants who had like a devastating, like gruesome injury last year.
And he was not good. He was not very good before he got hurt.
Which is like career threatening injury.
Smith. Yeah.
And he came back like a couple weeks ago and played a few snaps for them. I actually think that guy is more likely to win. Nobody even knows who he is than Derrick Henry.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Like,
and you're trying to figure out like, are people going to fall for this? Basically, like Rob and I, it's perhaps it's possible that we have collaborated on betting Nick Gates for a very small amount of money. Thankfully, a very small amount of money. Like I didn't get the better of myself from a thought process wise in the moment because I'm holding this Geno position and all you're trying to do is just like dodge landmines, basically. Like we're in, it's great. I hate Saquon to win the award. Geno will beat Saquon most times. He can get hurt, sure. But like, is there something stupid that can happen here? And then like, here comes this dummy. And like, he gets put in, and like, so I just find an off market price. We found like a 33
to
I
1,
think, or something.
bet,
and it's literally just enough to cover like a small amount. I just was like, it's not even that he could have, because he can't win. Like, he can't actually win, but it's in the moment. There's some chance he can win, even if it's 1%. And I swear to God, if this happens and this guard wins this award, and like Geno Smith's the third leading passer in the NFL and doesn't win, I will be so angry and furious. Like, it's actually a terrible bet because it was made with emotion, but like, I couldn't take it.
It's not
like,
terrible.
I actually couldn't take it.
All it takes is a Thanksgiving Day feature on Nick Gates to just bring this to the public spotlight of like, oh, this guy came back from this, and
they had one loss at the time. They were like 6-1 or 7, whatever. Like, it was actually a terrible bet, but I'll tell you what, you know why it wasn't a terrible bet? It made me feel better. Like, I slept better.
Yes.
I slept better.
Give me Geno Smith. I'm fading Nick Sirianni for Coach of the Year as a favorite.
Okay, but who are you going with?
I'm going to look for other options. I'll let you guys know on the next podcast.
Oh,
I know. I got to take a look at, because honestly, it's based on the schedule. Like, you got to project it. Like, listen, Andy Reid's far down. The Chiefs, I think, have a good chance of winning out, but I don't think Andy Reid can win the award. I'm going to have to
look. It's not just the schedule.
Mike McDaniel.
Sirianni lost as a 13-point favorite. It's not just about
Mike McDaniel.
Mike McDaniel's going to win because Tua's not going to win the MVP.
Either way, I'm fading Sirianni, no doubt.
Okay.
Defensive Rookie of the Year, I'll probably just go Sauce Gardner. I think it's
Hutchinson's like the only other guy who can win because he's had 2 picks and a bunch of sacks recently. But I think everyone's so firmly in, like, Sauce is like an all-pro already that I guess Sauce gets hurt, obviously, but I think beyond Sauce hurt, Hutchinson would have to be probably crazy in the next 7 weeks in order for that to be different.
Okay, defensive MVP Micah Parsons -325. I'm staying clear of that just because
Judon's got to be a good bet.
He's third favorite. No, I don't.
Defensive most. I'm not trying to give all the secret sauce away here. Defensive MVP or Player of the Year is like entirely a reputation award. It has nothing to do with leading in sacks.
Okay, I did not know that, so I appreciate you clarifying that, because Judon against the Vikings O-line for Thanksgiving Day is
there's still too many games left for me to lay -325.
Totally agree.
On a
you'd be better off betting Bosa, to be honest, even though I don't think he'll win either, but you'd be better off betting Bosa.
Okay, offensive rookie of the year. If I had to give one pick right now, I'm going Kenny Pickett, but I do think it's not going to be Dameon Pierce. So that would be my bigger play, is I'm fading Dameon Pierce here. And then regular season MVP. Now, Mahomes seems obvious. Ken, you going Josh Allen at all? You taking a shot after this? After last week? What do you got for MVP?
So I think Mahomes is either appropriately priced or should be longer, or should be more of a favorite, not just because like they're awesome and they're projected to be probably the 1 seed, but he's like building a statistical lead over Josh Allen also. And so that's the biggest thing, right? Like when Allen beat him, they beat the Chiefs, the idea was like, that settles it, basically. Like Allen beat him, like that will be the tiebreaker. The only way that's not the tiebreaker is if there's a big statistical gap between them. And there might be. Like there's a real chance, like we do this on the show sometimes, Mahomes' offensive player of the year is like way live, and the market is starting to lower his price. But of all the players who have the potential to break offensive, I gotta go right after this, by the way. Yep. But of all the players who are on pace to break offensive records, like Tyreek and Jefferson are just below Calvin Johnson's single season receiving yards record right now. They maybe get there, maybe they don't. Patrick Mahomes is on pace to break Peyton Manning's single season passing yards record right now by 150 yards and to throw for 50 touchdowns
with the extra game.
But handicap the voters. Do the voters care that it's an extra game? No. No. So I actually think Mahomes wins the double like a good amount of the time, and that's not being priced right now. People think maybe Kelsey, which is kind of like a weird one. Like maybe he just needs a lot more yards, honestly. Maybe one of the receivers breaks Calvin's record. Maybe Derrick Henry goes nuts, but I think it's really unlikely. It's kind of like, I think Mahomes double is actually like kind of in play.
What do you mean double?
Offensive player and MVP and offensive player of the year.
Yeah.
Okay,
let's let Ken go.
No, 15 seconds or less. You have to be the guy to answer the closing question. We do it with every single guest. If you could go back 5 years and talk to a previous version of yourself, what piece of advice would you give to your old self? 15 seconds or less.
I am not a mathematical person, and I would tell myself, like, you're about to get obsessed with like math and trying to like create projections. Don't do that. Do what you're good at, which is like information, access to information, analyzing it, like all other forms of handicapping. Like I had fun making numbers, but it probably was more of a waste of time than I thought.
That's Ken Barkley at Locky Lockerson on Twitter, the co-host of You Better You Bet, Monday to Friday, 3 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time on the Odyssey app, and you can find it wherever you get your podcasts as well. Thanks to everyone who tuned in. Please like and subscribe. This has been Circles Off, presented by Pinnacle, episode number 77. We'll catch you next week.